All right. I hope everyone can see and hear us. Dear participants, speakers, and partners of our event, we are delighted to welcome you to the first investment forum organized by the Ukrainian Bar Association. Today, we have gathered here to discuss the most important issues concerning the investment climate in Ukraine, economic development prospects, and the legal aspects of investing. We live in times when the global economy and business environment are changing at an incredible pace. This creates new opportunities for investment, but also presents new challenges. Our forum is designed to be a platform for constructive dialogue between business representatives, the public sector, lawyers, and investors. Today, we have a unique opportunity to hear from leading experts in the fields of economics, investment, and law, discuss current issues, and share experiences. Our speakers will present their analytical forecasts, share insights, and advice on best practices in the field of investment. I would like to thank all participants for their interest in our event and our partners for their financial support. The general partner, ICU Group, thank you very much. Partner, law firm Equo. Session partners, CMS Cameron McKenna Nabarro Olsfang, Sayenko Herenko, LCF Group, Morris, Avalum, and Integritas. We are confident that today's discussions will be useful and informative, as well as contribute to the development of new business connections and ideas. And I also hope we'll be able to share with you some of the insights about real aspects of doing business in Ukraine and change some of the misconceptions that many people have about doing business in Ukraine. Finally, we also look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the second day of the forum, which will be held in the hybrid format in Kyiv and online. We hope for your active participation and the continuation of our productive discussions. I wish everyone a successful and inspiring day at our investment forum. And I would like now to turn the floor to Andy Hunder, who is supporting from the American Chamber of Commerce of Ukraine this event. Andy, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Mikola, and good afternoon, everybody, and greetings from a gloriously sunny Kyiv here from the AmCham office on the 15th floor, and our great view of this beautiful city here in Kyiv. So I think the message is that Kyiv stands, Ukraine stands, and business stands united with Ukraine. And we, since the full-scale invasion, we have seen 190 new companies join the AmCham, and this really sends a message that companies believe in Ukraine, believe in the future, and are here working already. So we are here bringing great people together. Our legal committee, one of our 25 committees, is one of the leading ones. We have 1,000 lawyers on the legal committee, bringing together some of the best lawyers here in Ukraine, working together with lawyers across the globe. So I think the message is Ukraine is open for business. So we very much look forward to seeing you in Ukraine very soon. We are here any assistance that we can. Please do let us know. I think we stand united. Ukraine is united, and we are here. So thank you to all the good people that bringing people together, uniting people. It's great to see so many familiar friends and faces, and look forward to seeing those who will be in Berlin next week at the Ukraine Recovery Conference, and a lot of work ahead of us. And I think we are supporting the armed forces of Ukraine. 84% of our members are serving in the armed forces today. And it's really helping everyone moving forward towards victory. But we can only do this with great lawyers, and I think the great lawyers that we have here is truly a great group. So on behalf of the AmCham, thank you. Thank you to all your support for Ukraine. Thank you to all the lawyers that are working every day, and together towards victory. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Andy. And I would like to turn the floor now to Makar Pasenyuk, our general partner. Makar, the floor is yours.
Mikola, well, thank you so much. It's good to be here. Good to see a number of familiar faces. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And on behalf of ICU, welcome to what I find to be a very unique and interesting format, at least in my opinion. And this is, the first time we were invited to a format like that. Had a wonderful speech, prepared for me for the welcoming note, but I decided to make it less official, and the reason is that when I was first offered the participation in the forum, I was initially reluctant because finance people speaking to a lawyers forum is not exactly the format that we're used to. But then it started me kind of thinking, and as you know, we interact with a lot of you professionally, be it as a client, be it as a partner, in lots of formats, and I just thought that actually it's a wonderful, great idea, because finance investments are never achieved without lawyers, and I think we are so interconnected in what we do and what we achieve, and I think being more interconnected will allow us to achieve more. While there is a great American movie called The Field of Dreams. I'm not sure if you have watched that, but I would highly recommend it. It's a movie with Kevin Costner that was done in late 80s, and the movie plot is fairly simple. A distressed farmer from Iowa that is on the verge of bankruptcy walks around his cornfields and starts hearing these voices in his head that encourage him to build a baseball field in the middle of his cornfield. So the guy is originally the Kevin Costner character is originally very reluctant to do that, but then he buys into the idea, and effectively invests all his money that he has left, and he is already in distress to build this baseball stadium. And throughout kind of the plot, he doubts whether it's actually a good idea, because he has these conversations in his head, and the voice inside of his head says, build the field and they will come. And the way I understand the general idea of this forum is to start building the stadium so they come. And by they, I mean investors, capital providers in all shapes and forms. And I encourage all of you to get inspired by what would be discussed. I'm sure you are all very well aware of all the issues that the country has, but we should be looking into the future and the moment when the players and the visitors that will come to watch and pay for it will come. But the key here is, in my opinion, is to prepare a field that would be played upon. And, working together and getting inspired by each other will allow us to build the field, in my opinion, at least. So I wish you an inspiring journey, an inspiring forum, and enjoy the session.
Thank you very much, Makar. Exactly, this is what we are trying to do, to build the field for the new investors to come and for existing investors to stay. And for those who are listening to us, I can assure you that the predominant majority of foreign investors that have been in Ukraine have stayed. And with that, I would like to pass the floor to our wonderful moderator, Olga Fedosova from White & Case, who will be leading this first session and focusing on the macroeconomic issues, investment issues. And Olga, please go ahead and present our esteemed panelists.
Thank you, Mykola. So good afternoon to our guests, our panelists, and UBA community who joined us today. My name is Olga Fedosova. I'm White & Case partner. I'm Ukrainian from Dnipro, been working with Ukraine and for Ukraine for about 15 years. And I'm very pleased to moderate this opening session organized by UBA. And the subject of our panel today is helicopter view investment climate in Ukraine. We are now in the third year of the war, devastating war, humanitarian tragedy. And at the same time, Ukraine and Ukrainian people proved heroic resilience on all fronts, including economic resilience too. Ukraine business in different sectors, and Makar and Mykola made a good point on that, continue to exist, and not only they continue to reinvent themselves. So today we will look into the role of public and private sector in recovery of Ukraine. We will look at achievements and challenges of investing in Ukraine, and we'll try to brainstorm about what it takes to improve investment climate in Ukraine going forward. So I would like to take a moment now to present our great panel of experts today, starting with Marlena Hurley, who is Managing Director of Political Risk Insurance and Reinsurance at U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. Hello, Marlena. Božidar Delik, who is Head of Lazard for Central and Eastern Europe. Božidar is on his mission in Romania that's connected to Ukraine, and he will definitely update us on what brought him here. He is speaking from a minibus as we are comfortably sitting in our chairs. Makar Patsenyuk, who doesn't really require introduction, he's a founding partner at ICU Group, which has been the pioneering house in the Ukraine investment field for decades. Patricia Shaughnessy, who is associate professor at Stockholm University, and her specialty is international disputes and commercial law. I don't know if Patricia managed to connect. I think she had some issues. And the last but not the least, we'll have Stefan Weiler, who is head of CEMEA Debt Capital Markets at JP Morgan. He will join us a little bit later during this session. So let me start, and I would like to start with a question to Marlena, if I may. DFC has been obviously very active in Ukraine, providing financial supports to different types of projects, food security, small businesses, health. We would like to know your view, Marlena, how important is public sector role of DFC and other DFIs in reconstruction of Ukraine today? And maybe without mentioning the names, if you could tell us what is on DFC radar today, what DFC has done since the war has started in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olga. And I would just like to say that it's a great honor for me to be here and speak with this distinguished audience and fellow panelists here. Yes, I'm happy to answer your questions. First of all, I think public insurers play a critically important role in Ukraine at this juncture. The private markets have almost abandoned Ukraine for understandable reasons. It's that's just how the private political risk insurance market works. But the public insurers here are really additional. And I would just like to start with a reminder that political risk insurance, the way we are using it today, was created by the US government after World War II as part of the Marshall Plan to rebuild the European economy. Although the program was originally managed by other State Department and USAID, DFC's predecessor organization, Overseas Private Investment Corporation, has provided political risk insurance since 1971. So DFC builds on a long track record of the US government responding with innovative financial tools to encourage investments in post-war economies and emerging markets. So that's just by way of background. And we are called on to respond to crises in Ukraine as well as in other countries. And it's really a unique role that at this point only the public sector can play. So we have been, as Olga, as you said correctly, we have been supporting investments in Ukraine even after the start of the war. And I'd like to say the following. The economy is constrained by the war, severely constrained by the war, but we are witnessing Ukrainian and foreign companies making heroic efforts to keep the economy going, despite being under attack. And it's a DFC and US government priority to support companies in Ukraine in this effort. What we are doing is we are underwriting projects in a variety of sectors, and that includes the energy sector, the healthcare sector, the agribusiness sector, any kind of infrastructure that supports key areas of the economy. We are actively underwriting these projects. Obviously, we are not discussing which companies and which regions and so on, but we are really trying to do our best to support keeping the economy going. So we are trying to be very open to investments in different regions of Ukraine, different sectors, different investors. I would also like to state that for the first time in the life of DFC and certainly its predecessor organization, we have taken the view that we can provide insurance directly to Ukrainian businesses for political violence coverage. I just want to explain that a little bit better. Political violence includes it's really war risk insurance, as most Ukrainian companies understand that coverage. But what's new about it is that we did not used to insure host country companies against such political risks. It's just commonly used for foreign investors to encourage foreign investors to enter a market. I'm going to stop here because you might have a follow-up question, and I can certainly discuss in more detail.
Thank you, Marlene. And indeed I do, because I think it's this new product of yours that is tailored to Ukraine is exceptionally interesting. I think we're all familiar with political risk insurance that's been a great success for many projects around the world, and especially in emerging markets countries. But here I think we face a very, very specific case. And maybe if you could tell a little bit more about this type of political violence insurance, what it covers, and whether, again, without mentioning any particular names, but in which sectors of the economy do you see more appetite for that? Where, if you have any sort of more or less advanced projects, where foreign investors buy into this product and see it as an angle to enter Ukrainian market? That would be very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, let me just divide this into categories. First of all, we are responding to requests from companies that are already in Ukraine. First of all, Ukrainian companies that obviously aren't leaving Ukraine, but who need the financial security to be able to weather storms, to rebuild after damage, and so on. So, for Ukrainian companies, we offer political, essentially war risk coverage, which protects the companies against, let's say, missiles from foreign hostile powers, but also can protect them against stray missiles fired by Ukrainian armed forces that just have gone astray, which would not happen if there weren't a war. So we really protect against any such damage to physical infrastructure, but also we protect against loss of business income as a result of damage to physical assets. So that's really important to understand. We can also protect against terrorism and sabotage. But what we don't typically do is to protect, we would not normally provide coverage for host country investors against civil strife that is limited to host country issues. With respect to foreign investors in Ukraine, we offer any coverages that the investor requires, whether it's for an existing project, and we have done so. I've mentioned the sectors. I will not speak more specifically, and we are in negotiations with a variety of companies. Cannot also. You'll probably hear more next week from our CEO at the conference in Berlin. But we are so offering all possible coverages to foreign investors, U.S. companies, European companies, and others, and that also includes expropriation coverage, as well as the broad range of political violence coverage. I hope that was relatively sufficient.
It is very helpful and it's very insightful. Thank you so much, Marlena. And I think it shows a huge role that the public sector and DFC in particular plays in today's investment landscape of Ukraine. I think it's also a very nice segue to the question I would like to ask Božidar, who I think now changed his settings to something more comfortable. So I'll take this opportunity. Božidar,
can you hear me?
Perfectly well.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yes. Perfectly. Božidar, you, Lazard is an institution, you have been actively involved in Ukraine in both state-owned and private sectors. And would be interesting to know, again, without maybe disclosing any particular names to the extent it's not yet public, but what keeps you active today and what patterns of investment activity do you currently see in the Ukrainian market?
I think what has happened, I can say. So, for example, last year, we actually did 4 transactions, actually 3 transactions and one, I think, important event. The event is that together with very worthy lawyers of White & Case, I have to say, and a very, I would say, aggressive as they should be, solicitors and trial lawyers of Queen Emmanuel. In last March, we were together with the authorities, were able, as probably many of the lawyers on the call will know, to get a non-precedented decision of the UK Supreme Court, which for the first time recognized the argument of duress in sovereign debt issues. And that was important because then that has to do with the $3 billion so-called Russian bond, as you know, that has now grown with arrears to 4.9. And now it will be up to Russia to prove that they did not impose the rest on Ukraine, to get reimbursed. So on top of that, there's going to be a public trial. So a lot of the rest will be exposed. So I think that has been a significant win. Then there were 2 debt transactions. And I think it's what I would like to draw because there might be a lesson there, is that those were negotiated negotiations around debt. So not something where basically the debtor just says, this is it, you know, please support me, yes or no. One was with Nibulon, which is still ongoing. It's a very complex one. It's $580 million, 32 banks, half of them Ukrainian, half foreign. Very difficult, and you know, every week now you see some arrangements being done. The lesson here is that actually it's very difficult for Ukrainian companies that do not have, let's say, one or two anchor and leading financial institutions backing them to carry the day. Here, in the case of Nibulon, it works, but it's difficult because it's very spread out, and so you don't have a natural leader amongst the creditors that will be able kind of to negotiate together with the company. So it was pretty involved because of that. And then the last one I'd like to mention in terms of that is the Naftogaz, the two Eurobonds, where credit committees were created, and then we negotiated with, and we came to an agreement which, like all agreements, if you do nothing, everything's fine. But when you do something, then you get criticized. And I suppose there is a plus in the negotiation agreement, because after that, Naftogaz has exited default, so it's not in a defaulted status, which is these days pretty rare for the state sector. And now it's meeting its obligations are per the negotiated agreement that we have reached last year, which is also good. I suppose hopefully that's going to be the case also with the rest of the sovereign, quasi-sovereign debt, where we don't have a mandate, to be clear. And so that's what we would hope, because a negotiated agreement under the current circumstances requires that the kind of Ukraine, despite all the difficulties, find a way to make a step or two toward the creditors. But also on the creditor side, I mean, I will definitely not give names, but for sure you are constantly, you know, faced with the fact that behind the nice words publicly, there are also some harsh stance being taken privately on the type of agreement that could be acceptable. And now what we hear, well, actually you have great, foreign reserves. Why don't you pay? But we all know that those foreign reserves are there because of very specific circumstances surrounding both the financing of the budget of Ukraine and of the banking sector. So it cannot be just one, you know, looking at one figure. One has to look at everything. And then the last thing we did, which I think I'm quite proud of, is the fact that there has been, as you know, one large cross-border equity investment from a French very wealthy individual. That's the NJJ of Xavier Niel. And this is in telecom, so we've been advising on the sell side there. I think the lesson here from trying to do other deals, as you can imagine, and not necessarily always succeeding, because that's how it works in investment banking quite often, is that sometimes I feel that the Ukrainian authorities, sometimes, and maybe some advisors, are kind of pushing a little bit too much of the, I will not say the cookie cutter, but kind of still the usual approach, saying, well, you should try to attract the leading names in private equity. Those are the kind of the A-list of investors. They made nice statements about Ukraine. To be quite open, I think that these are the days where Ukraine should focus on the things that are doable. And I'll take what Makar said. Yes, one day there's going to be a field of dreams, but it's not going to happen just keeping it very nice and open and empty. We should have more, step by step, more and more players enter in. And so I'll give you for whatever it's worth, a couple of ideas of who could be the investors in Ukraine right now. And what are the enabling mechanisms in terms of the legal work, which is, thanks to the kind invitation here today, what could facilitate? So one thing that the best investors, as quite often, but these days in Ukraine more than ever, are those who are already there. So if you want to have investment in banking or insurance, for sure, a lot of effort should be given to the people who are already present, domestic and foreign. And that's where the most likely will be the result of kind of succeeding in doing some consolidation in the market, stuff that were not done before. So although I'm not sure that there's going to be a privatization of banks these days, the likely candidates are for sure the banks that are ready in Ukraine. And one should not spend too much time trying to convince somebody from the States or Germany that has never put a foot in Ukraine to try to do so now. The second thing, and here I always have a nice friendly but tense exchange with IFIs and the European Union in particular, Ukraine can become a significant exporter of natural gas. Maybe not replace Russia in total, but knowing the wells that exist already, and those have been identified, including onshore, not even speaking of the offshore, which is going to be a bit more difficult in the part, you know, of the Black Sea that even today Ukraine controls, and I hope they will control more. It is exceedingly difficult to attract international financing because of the green agenda. And I'm not saying that the green agenda, of course, is not needed, but a lot of the rules have been bent for Ukraine. And I don't understand why we have the situation where IFIs refuse kind of to step out from what is the mandate of kind of climate bank for EIB or other stuff, you know, for maybe Marlena can tell us a word or two about what the DFC will be able to do. So nobody is ready kind of to finance NAFTA, Ukernafta and other people to become self-sufficient in terms of fossil energy sources, and then meet the demand of Germany and Italy, for example. Germany, it's 4 billion euro of net natural gas demand per month. And for some of the best clients you can get in the world, like BASF and others, no, we're not helping Ukraine to generate that supply. And then what happens is not that Europe is not buying natural gas, so the footprint is not going down. No, but they buy liquid gas from America or from Qatar or from, you know, natural from Azerbaijan and other places. So there's no better way kind of to make a more sustainable Ukraine these days than to support in terms of foreign investment or foreign financing than those sectors. And then the last thing I'd like to say is in terms of the enabling mechanism. I think if you look at about the war insurance, what is very, in my view, efficient, and I think Ukrgas has, with other partners, shown the way, is, for example, if you have the insurance which is specific for the war circumstances for certain vessels or for certain acts of management. I'm less convinced about the blanket war insurance that will allow for some kind of, you know, brownfield or no, even a greenfield manufacturing investment to be made. Because to put it in a graphic way, if they build it and then a missile destroys it, it's not only, you know, it's not sufficient to cover the cost of having built it. A lot of work would have been put into that in those premises in this, you know, production unit. And then again, it would have been integrated in the value chain of that company that has created that. So the risk at this point of time of building a greenfield manufacturing, you know, facility and given the attached risk cannot be covered, in my view, by this war insurance, because it's not only about the cost of building it. What would be better, I would say, is to use the available resources and to guarantee some of the financing for projects that can be done. To do some credit enhancement for private companies, which at this point is impossible to do, and why not? Or for some state-owned companies for, you know, the fossil fuel, but also for the renewables that they can invest. So I would say that's where I would say the stuff could be done. And then in terms of, let's say, the investors, for sure, the domestic investors, and then all those investors who have a lot of more degrees of freedom. The one investment that was made was with a very wealthy French individual who is a billionaire and who has a credit committee of one, which is himself. And I mean, I would say, I'm not saying that we should only talk to billionaires or multi-billionaires to invest in Ukraine, but definitely all the institutions that have a longer perspective and less, I would say, traditional corporate governance stuff stuck on them, being that they are listed or that they have a lot of LPs. It means that, you know, private, you know, offices, wealthy individuals, and then very sizable institutions that have a long tail money. Those are, I would say, the type of investors that should be more courted. Sorry, I was probably a little bit too long, and I hope I was audible out of Romania on a deal which might have a link with Ukraine, but I cannot say much. I can say anything at this point of time. And once again, I'd like closing to thank you for the kind invitation, and I'm open for any questions, of course, or discussions with my co-panelists. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, Božidar, that's super interesting, and actually, you gave a couple of pieces for the next question that I wanted to talk about. So my next question was about like challenges that investors face now when they enter Ukraine. And your case about Zabianiel and the telecom deal that you mentioned is super interesting because it's probably one of very few examples that we could mention today that foreign money came to Ukraine despite the war, right? It's not, they didn't rely on, it's not one of the examples of the deal that paid on local money because local money is stuck in Ukraine because of currency control, and we'll talk about it in a moment during the session too. It's really foreign money that came to Ukraine with a purpose. And one of the challenges that you kind of indirectly mentioned is the corporate governance within international investors themselves that probably views today Ukraine as a very risky place to go to. And these are conversations I have on a daily basis, for instance, with my clients who see opportunities in Ukraine, but offline they tell me, well, you know, it's all great, but let's wait after the war. We will come in, but after the war. What can be done with this situation today? How, in the context we unfortunately are in, how can we try to mitigate or remove the challenges that investors face, taking into account that we can't remove the war factor, but what can we improve? What is in our hands?
I think, frankly, given the circumstances, because I am very bullish for Ukraine now over the mid and long term, there's just, I would say there's no point in spending too much time on listed companies that have never had any presence in Ukraine, because for them, the hurdle of going through the different investment committees and the board and all of that, you know how it goes. A lot of time is lost to knock on doors that might be open later. I mean, they should be kept informed, but for individual, I would say investors, I think really, I'm gonna slightly repeat myself, maybe with some additional details. The first, I would say, circle really is for the investors that are already in Ukraine, that have stayed in Ukraine, because they do have and they carry the risk. And so the effort should be to help them mitigate that risk. What does it mean? It means that maybe international financial organizations could help them partly refinance some of the work they have done so that they would share the risk. So for example, they would have invested up until a certain time, 200 million, maybe a refinancing, which would be up to 60 million with a corporate guarantee. They already carry the risk. But if somebody they divide the risk and then they provide the corporate guarantee to the IFIs, the mother, it's still better than the situation that is today. And it could free up maybe everything being equal, another 60 million that they could invest so that their overall, net direct exposure would stay the same. Also, I would say what is quite useful these days is also to help not necessarily only on law and finance. It's about the labor market, because the big issue will be, about the mobilization, will be about replacing the people, will be able to integrate the people who might be working on the remote and so forth. So I think it's the labor flexibility that could be brought by the government and also by the local governments, helping them fill in the ranks. Because what some of the people tell me is that it's one of the biggest problems they have today is to operate, is to find the workforce and to work. And then, I'm going back to some sectors, and then I'll finish with the identity of the investors. It's just, you take, again, I'm going to talk about fossil fuels. So it happens, investors in those industries typically don't invest in Denmark or in Switzerland, Somehow it happens that the funds are in difficult places. So those investors are used to difficult situations, civil war, protecting their employees and stuff. Those are things that are not new for them. Whereas for people in the pharma industry, oh my God, they are not used to those topics. There's a bunch of sectors where they are very sensitive. Oh my God, I need to insure by the ton for every single trip of my employee if he or she crosses the front, and that's difficult. So I think that's one sector which is sturdy and where there is employment. So I would focus on that. I would focus on the majors, on the mini majors. I would focus on the renewables. I would do everything I can to produce more energy of all sorts. And then there's also the immaterial, which of course, you know, that's kind of, oh my God, I build this factory and there's a missile and it's over. Well, in IT, in artificial intelligence, on top of that, people can work from different places in order to produce the added value. Here you go. That should be, despite everything, a priority. And I have to tell you, very recently, deals were done which were not Ukraine linked, but the IT companies that were sold had very significant campuses in Ukraine. One in Kiev, another one in Lviv. And it was a very important selling point, the fact that they were able to operate them, okay? And that actually the contribution of those campuses did not go down. It continued to be at the same level, quantity, quality, and so forth. So a lot of, I would say, care should be given to maintain this kind of traditionally strong now strength of Ukraine that, you know, can be there because you have a scalable added value there. It cannot be bombed out. It's immaterial, the product that you'll be exporting or producing. So that's it. And in closing, yeah, I think the investors that can stomach more risk already gave a few ideas. And for the lawyers, I would say, yes, I think MAC clauses, they are bigger than ever, for sure. Yes, the reps and warranties and due diligence work is more complicated because sometimes the investors will not be able to send as many people as would have wanted to check the investment site or the equipment that is being sold. So they need to rely on the capacity of, let's say, the Big Four or the specialized people who are doing the technical, the ecology and other stuff. So this capacity also has to be facilitated so that you can prepare an SPA that is at the international level. So those are some ideas. I hope it will help some of the people thinking. For sure, for us as Lazard, we have started. I mean, I lived in. I was a CEO of a bank when we bought one in 2006-7. So that's how long my connection with the country is. But with Lazard, since the debt restructuring, you know, we started in 2014. We have been working nonstop in Ukraine, and we'll continue doing so.
Božidar, thank you so much. That's really great, and I think it gives all of us a flavor of you know, what you see in terms of transactions, what you see in terms of challenges, and more importantly, what's the target audience of foreign investors who could be the first to come to Ukraine and, put it simply, would not be constrained, would not be afraid to do business here in the current circumstances. And I think it's a very nice.
Yeah, Olga, if I may, just last thing, Olga, just one thing, because I forgot to mention, because we mentioned this French very wealthy person.
Yes.
Mind you, at the first step, he will be, I cannot give the figure, it will be a very significant figure where he will be put on equity risk. But part of the deal is that partly he will be refinanced by IFIs. So even for him, it was important to be able to find some financing that only at this point of time the IFIs were ready to do. So I quite often am seen as criticizing now. I'd like to thank them, EBRD, IFC, and others.
Wow, I think the role of IFIs, and that goes to credit goes to Marlene, who represents them in the face of GFC today. But the role of IFIs in what is happening today in Ukraine is undisputable and extremely important. So now I'd like to turn to Makar, please. And Makar, if you could give us your perspective of the main drivers for the deals today, what sort of transactions you see in Ukraine these days, that would be really helpful.
Well, I think it would be fair to say that not much is happening. At least in my opinion, and debt restructurings, it's all, you know, it's all good work. Unfortunately, you know, unavoidable, and this is what happens in situations like that. But if we are talking about kind of new FDIs, new deals, you know, not much is happening. And you know, what we all kind of observe, and you as lawyers as well, is that you know, the role of you know, most of the deals are done by the locals, and the reason they do the deals is because they have some issues with FX controls. The local currency cash pile is growing, and everybody starts thinking what to do with this liquidity, and in most cases, when people cannot grow, in their own sectors, they start diversifying into other sectors. And in most cases, those other sectors would be hard assets equivalent of passive investments. A good example of that would be green energy projects that do not take a lot of effort to manage, but even now generate quite a decent return. I'm of the opinion that a situation like that is likely to continue. Požadar has been very diplomatic, but if you think about it, for the what would be the identity of people that would invest into Ukraine now, or even after immediately after the war is over? Those would be the adventurous, / greedy people. That would require risk premium naturally for deploying equity, and achieving kind of the required return because of this enhanced risk premium can be achieved effectively as a recipe from the textbook in two ways. This is the price, or the capital structure. And what Požadar has said already is that for capital structure, the role of IFIs is IFIs have the leading role because they have the resources and lower cost of funding than Ukrainian banking sector, and usually the presence of IFIs instills additional comfort into groups, companies, people that make decisions on deploying equity. Obviously, insurance in all shapes and forms, is a welcomed and I would say in some cases necessary part of the package. But I think that we all should recognize the fact that in order for us to make them come, A, there should be a product, and B, there should be a return. How the balance between price and return is found is a combo of capital structure.
Great. Thank you so much, Makar. And I think what would be really interesting is to see, you mentioned that there is obviously not much going on. We know the transactions that are happening. We know that they are limited. We know that classic foreign direct investments are not rushing into Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a chance for improvement in your view? And I think we that Ukraine had issues that were sort of problematic for the investment climate even before the war. How important are they in the big scale of things now? Can something be done about them now? And how do you see any scope of improvement be made, if at all?
Well, improvement can always be made, and I think it's one of the reasons forums like that take place. You know, I will not talk about problems. I think you know, the lawyers would be the first people to recognize those problems, and you know, I just don't want to take everybody's time talking about issues. But I would like to make a point, you know, which somewhat resonates with what Bozhidar said. In order, you know, to achieve sustainable stability and growth for Ukraine post-war, there should be an object of the investments. And I don't mean kind of private-to-private transactions. Those will happen, but they will not move the needle for the economy. And in the end of the day, the role of the IFIs and you know, everybody that wants to help Ukraine is to effectively create the tide of capital that can come and start turning around the, you know, the macro fortunes. And Ukraine has really been bad historically in creating the, at least in my opinion, creating the investment product that can be considered by serious capital. During, you know, my conversations and interviews historically, so, you know, in terms of which sectors are, you know, the most attractive for investments, and you know, where one can invest in Ukraine, it all depends on scale, right? So you know, yes, you can probably adequately deploy 10 million capital or $10 million of equity, but $10 million of equity or even, you know, $50 million of equity is not going to do the trick for the country, right? What is going to do the trick for the country is you know, large you know, attractive projects. I'll give you an example, which is quite interesting. So throughout you know, conversations and you know, past years of privatization, Ukraine, you know, at best you know, raised $20 billion. The law on green energy, and which I consider to be kind of so far the best and the most successful government or state-sponsored investment program or reform, whatever you call it, has attracted between $9 to $12 billion as a combination of equity and financing. So in order, you know, for large, impactful, you know, transactions to happen, that I'm sure, you know, when you know, given that those make sense, I'm sure that you know, all the FIs would be willing to support the sponsor that you know, will consider a transaction like that. But before a transaction like that takes place, there should be legislative basis for, you know, and thinking, strategic thinking, you know, behind that for, you know, something like that, you know, to happen. You know, a good example would be, you know, privatization and reform of the railroads of Ukraine. And just, you know, if you are thinking big, where can one deploy, billions of dollars? So, and how kind of the state can benefit from that. So the oil and gas sector, as Bojidar mentioned, is another one. Because believe it or not, in terms of reserves, Ukraine is the third largest country after Norway and Netherlands in terms of reserves. Which means that Ukraine, from a net importer, I'm talking about pre-war data, from a net importer of gas can become a net exporter of gas if those reserves are developed. But somebody should encourage the development of those reserves. What it would be, decreasing, dropping royalty for new projects, with attaching conditions on faster development, be it other forms of stimulus, needs to be decided and thought about. But those things create employment. Those things affect energy independence. Those things affect trade balance, which over time, which is a problem right now, and will continue to be a problem after the war. Because throughout Ukraine's kind of independence, it does. If I remember correctly, Ukraine has had positive trade balance, twice. So to summarize, big things that will make a difference take take a lot of thinking and preparation. Be it the infrastructure, there are kind of a number of other examples. Think about all this human, civil things like waste management, water management, things like that. And those things are still state-owned. They require a lot of capital. Will require more capital because of the damages. But in order for strategic investors, if we're talking about foreign strategic investors, to get involved into things like that, there should be, a comprehensive, reliable, legislation program put in place that they will believe in, that will make sense for the country and will make sense for the investors.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Makar. And I can see there are lots of interesting discussion also going in our chat, which we will touch upon. But very quickly, so that we make good use of the time, I think 20 minutes that we have, I would like to ask a couple of questions to Stefan Weiler, who has just joined us. Hello, Stefan. Thanks for making it. I know it is a busy day for you. So
thanks for having me.
Thank you. So just a couple of questions. JP Morgan has been super active in Ukraine for years, continues to be doing lots of deals today. Can you please tell us in a couple of words about your activity in supporting Ukraine recovery, and also what do you see in terms of private investors going into real foreign private investors, not domestic growth, coming to Ukraine today?
Sure, it's a pleasure. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, as you say, Olga, we've been very active in Ukraine before the war and now also during the war. And, the profile of our activity has changed, obviously, over the last couple of years. So, most of the transactions that we have been involved in have been dealing with the consequences of the war, right? So in other words, these are mainly restructuring or consent solicitations that were necessary as a consequence of the war. the one for the government almost a couple of years ago was the most significant, as it also had some follow-on effects on some of the quasi-sovereigns. But I think it was also very clear in demonstrating what Ukraine understands of a post-war environment, right? And the post-war environment that I think the government foresees, or we all know, there's a lot of very high refinancing and reconstruction costs. I think the World Bank, the latest figure I found was around 500 billion. I've seen other numbers closer to $1 trillion. It's a lot of money, and it's clear that the public sector will not be able to fund these sort of numbers, and that the private sector will have to play a very instrumental role. And as such, I think the government had that foresight also to keep its relationships. I think it was a key objective also in the restructuring that we've done with the government, but also subsequently with some of the SOEs, is to maintain strong relationships, right, that they had invested in for years prior to the war, with the private sector, with fixed income investors primarily, and to treat them fairly and maybe even nicely. And I think this is a foresight of, knowing how much the private sector will have to contribute to the reconstruction of Ukraine. And so we've worked on this. We've worked on, as I said, some private sector, public sector company consent solicitations that brought more flexibility about payments that are due. We've also done some buybacks with the help of the IFIs. MHP is I think was a very good example of that a few months ago, together with the DFC and 2 other IFIs. And I'd also like to just send a shout out to Marlena on for being here as a representative of the IFI community. I find that in broader terms, the DFC has been the most forward-leaning of the IFIs in Ukraine, and we had a number of touch points about projects, also trying to raise financings for companies in Ukraine. Some of which are ongoing, live projects. So there are dialogues. There is work going on financings. It's clear that in the current environment, credit enhancements are needed. There is no risk return profile that currently suits international investors without some downside protection from the IFIs. And there are more products, and I think more willingness of the IFIs that I see, over time, over the last couple of years. Clearly, we'd love to see more transactions. Clearly, we would love to see shorter timelines in which these transactions can be realized, but there is progress. I think otherwise, we've on our side at JP, we focused a lot on helping the government maintain that dialogue with the international investment community. So be this through through our conferences, which were attended by the debt officials or even the president, or be this through high-level introductions to ultra high net worth individuals that may see opportunities in Ukraine, be it to introductions to private equity shops that may see opportunities. And I think it's fair to say that everyone sees the opportunity, but everyone sees the opportunity post-war. And there's only very few who are willing to take a step forward now or do the work, but there are some. And I think, one or two, I think, were highlighted in an earlier discussion. So I think this kind of is in sum what we've been generally working on the financing side and with investors. And then, as probably many of you know, we've been supporting BlackRock on the establishment of the Ukraine Development Fund. So this is a project that is ongoing. A lot of progress has been made. I would expect some announcements in the near future in terms of confirming some of the commitments and progress that we have made. And again, JP Morgan has been was asked by the government to support BlackRock on this. So this is really a BlackRock driven project that we support and that we help with, but it is our friends and colleagues at BlackRock who are running with it. We've also spending some time on a project that I can't really disclose a lot of details on, but that is geared towards facilitating investment and preparing investment opportunities in Ukraine, and we're partnering with another institution on this. But the details of this are not baked enough to share here in this forum. Olga, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. I'm making schoolboys error. Thank you so much, Stefan. That's really insightful, and I think there are clearly a lot of initiatives going on in Ukraine. The fund that you're setting up with BlackRock is particularly interesting because I think in terms of capacity that it will accumulate, it could make a big impact on investment landscape in Ukraine, and will very much hope so.
Yeah, I mean, just maybe a couple more words on this. I mean, it is. I mean, I think there's been a lot in the press, but it is just to maybe briefly summarize it or describe it. It is a vehicle that is being established to facilitate private sector investment in Ukraine. Yeah, that will have seed funding and maybe first loss type provisions from governments and selected IFIs to attract private sector investment, primarily after the war, however, right? I think there will be some projects that are realizable during the war, but the initial step or decision that was taken by the government to establish such a fund was to facilitate private sector investment post-war. And it has certain key sectors, right? I think to Makar's kind of point earlier, you have to be a bit strategic on where you want these investments to go and how you incentivize these investments, etc. And there has been thought put into that. There have been 4 to 5 kind of key sectors identified that this fund will focus on.
And is it already public what the focus would be, or is it yet to be announced?
I would, there have been, this information has been shared with potential capital providers, but not in a public domain like this. And I would, as I said in my earlier introduction, it's really a BlackRock project that we support and assist on and provide some advice on. So I wouldn't want to steal their thunder here, and we'll leave it to them to make the disclosure at the right time.
Absolutely, Stefan. Thank you so much, and we will all watch this space with great interest. I think it's a fascinating project. I'm just mindful of the time, and I would really want to give the floor to Patricia now, because Patricia, hello. Can you hear us? Perfect. Perfect. Well, could you please tell us a couple of words? As the only lawyer, if we are not counting me on the panel, what sort of barriers you identify for investors coming into Ukraine? What can be improved? What did you spot in your activity as an academic, but also with a practical eye? I know you have on these matters.
Well, yes, thank you very much. And I've been listening to the experts with great interest, and a lot of really important insights have been shared. Let me note that the reason why I'm appearing here is primarily because of the work I've been doing the last few years in the context of a USAID funded project in Ukraine, which when started was the New Justice Project, and now the new iteration is the Justice for All activities. And that project's been working on in a number of ways. And I became involved in, I guess it was in 2019, as a result of a request for some assessment reporting from the Ministry of Justice on improving the commercial dispute environment, and particularly in order to enhance attractiveness of Ukraine for its businesses and attracting foreign business and FDI. And the work on that was being done, and we resulted in an assessment which we produced in the fall of 2020 with recommendations. We then started to go further on working at doing activities and implementation. And in fact, on the afternoon of the day before the massive invasion, I was on a meeting with the Ministry of Justice and a meeting with the Ministry of Digital Transformation on developing different types of digital dispute resolution tools, and everything pivoted. But with the now turning to an eye towards rebuilding and trying to already now attract foreign businesses and investments, then interest became in turning back, both from governmental and non-governmental and other stakeholders, to enhancing the business climate and the investment landscape in Ukraine. So I've been leading a team now on this. We've been studying this. We were really got fully on board to doing our assessment and interviews in October. And so we've just now submitted a preliminary final report, which is being now vetted internally, and then we'll come back. So it will hopefully become available quite soon. And in that, so the only thing I can do is I am reporting what we have learned from stakeholders. And that is why I find these discussions today very interesting. And what we can see is that there has been a change of priorities since pre-massive invasion and today. Before, there was a much greater appetite among private sector and government in trying to do more long-term, more resource-heavy, more big changes to try to deal with the improvement of the judiciary, the improvement of dispute resolution, looking at creating new specialized courts, looking at creating new institutions and such. Since the massive invasion, it appears that most stakeholders are interested in things that will have immediate impact and trying to use resources, capital, human resources and commitments to try to improve as much as possible. And let me say, of course, since I'm coming from the perspective of dispute resolution, of course, you know, if you only have a hammer, everything is a nail. So the nails that I see are trying to ensure that when businesses, investors, and other parties create contracts that engage in legal rights and legal obligations, that they can rely that those are going to be carried out. And in order to have a healthy business and investment landscape, we need to ensure that there's really, truly commercial justice, where there are pathways to have expedient, trustworthy, fair, reliable dispute resolution that can ensure the outcomes. When the parties engage, whether it's in capital or whether it's creating different funding or different consortiums, particularly in an environment where we can anticipate that there will be public-private partnerships, there will be large infrastructure projects, there are investments which have a lot of upfront costs, but then a long period before any profit is made. It's essential that the dispute resolution environment can ensure proper planning and to ensure that the risk mitigation and risk allocation that is agreed upon when entering into these projects and anticipating what those risks will be and how they'll be carried out and allocated will actually be enforceable and can actually result in what the parties are envisioning for this. And that requires having a healthy judicial system that can respond efficiently, which is accountable, which is reliable and trustworthy. And so there's a lot of capacity building that needs to be done in Ukraine. Things have already been improved in the last few years, but there is a long path to go to engender the trust that is needed. There's also needs to be a lot of capacity building of businesses to be aware of the different types of tools and mechanisms that can help to ensure this. For lawyers to be well-trained, I can say in the dispute arena, and to some extent in M&A and in energy and others, Ukrainian lawyers, there's a great group of very competent Ukrainian lawyers who are highly regarded and relied upon. But the general legal profession needs to have better legal education already at the university level. There needs to be more professionalism. The ethical regulation can be improved and more integrated into the practice. There needs to be a whole host of capacity buildings to ensure that the Ukrainian commercial dispute resolution market and processes are in fact integrating quite well and providing the solutions that businesses, local businesses who are needed to become partners and parts of the supply chain, service partners with foreign businesses and with foreign investors. And also, it's been pointed out, to ensure that even local Ukrainian investors feel that they can make an investment that they can rely upon. So there's quite a lot of work to be done, and the report that we have made based upon the input that we've gotten from a wide range of sources is that there are many things that we can all work together and actually make impactful short-term and longer term. And I can just also note that part of this in the earlier assessment and now has been reaching out to international leading expert institutions and organizations who are in this space to see if we can then collaborate and then match them with different Ukrainian stakeholders and groups to actually deliver this capacity building and training, and also legislative and regulatory reform and advocacy. So to work together to create dialogue with counterparts, to create ongoing cooperation. And there is a huge interest, and we receive very positive desires to want to contribute and collaborate from the international parties and from the local stakeholders that we speak with, whether judiciary, lawyers, businesses, etc., are also very eager to participate and to contribute. So the silver lining, there are a lot of challenges. Not everybody's fully on board, but there are a lot of resilient, enthusiastic, committed partners in Ukraine and outside of Ukraine that want to use this horrible situation as an opportunity to make real differences. And of course, I'll just quickly note that somebody in the chat asked about the EU due diligence directive, which requires EU companies to have human rights, environmental, climate change things. And that has been mentioned about the challenge with the fossil fuel and how that will be. The short, obvious answer is right now, and you can anticipate there are things rolling out, that there's going to be a lot of support to Ukraine moving towards the EU standards and the EU expectations to move towards candidacy. So we will see that. That's going to be an area. And generally, globally, in the disputes market, so to speak, climate change, ESG, human rights is generating a great deal of work and interest in it. And it is very much a hot topic within dispute resolution, planning, prevention, and resolution. We see lots of cases that come up around that.
Thank you so much, Patricia. That is really great, and thanks for picking up this question on the corporate sustainability due diligence framework that is, as you said, a hot topic at the moment. I know we have about 10 minutes left, and I would like to use that for the questions. One of the questions Marlena already addressed in the chat, but maybe Marlena, just very quickly, how DFC sees helping not just big businesses, but also SMEs in the framework of the products that you offer in Ukraine.
Yeah, thanks, Olga. I can only repeat what I've already put in the chat, but we are actually, this is a very, very important question for us to look at with every project that we underwrite, because ultimately SMEs are the backbone of any economy, including in Ukraine. And it is on a practical level not possible to insure directly on all the assets of any SME, but there are different ways, and we are actually working on several projects where where the benefit would be directly going to SMEs as well as larger companies. Again, can't really. It's an ongoing project. It'll probably be. You'll probably hear more about it very soon. But SMEs are very important, and we support them through various tools, including on the lending side as well as on the political risk insurance side. But because there are so many SMEs, we have to find ways to help them in ways that in indirect ways as well as indirect ways, because it's just a process question in many situations.
Thank you so much, Marlena. And there is another very interesting question in the chat about, and I think it was from Igor Alehov. It's a brilliant question. Can the private business hope to get compensation from the Russian frozen assets, actually? And I know Russian frozen assets is a topic for a separate seminar on its own, and it's better to reserve half a day for that. But to the extent any of our panelists has like a quick thought on whether there is a room for private sector to get compensation out of this pie that everyone wants to have a piece of, the floor is yours, please.
Maybe a few words. I think it's a crawling topic. As you have seen, this has been, I mean, it depends on your position. Americans are very gung-ho, but they hold little of those assets. So it happens 80% of it is in Europe, and overwhelming majority is actually in Belgium. So a relatively small state. So them plus, I mean, the biggest Euro countries were worried, should there be a confiscation? What type of impact would that have on the euro as a currency of reserve? And kind of the and all the arguments going, well, we should not go against lawlessness by being outside of the rule of law ourselves. Now, this being said, truth is that it started with the interest being served to support Ukraine, and as you have all seen, America, which now doesn't want to give grants anymore because of this internal dynamics, politically speaking, they want to give a loan. But then, you know, if you saddle, you know, Ukraine for support with another $50 billion sovereignly guaranteed loan, I mean, this is a huge amount of money compared to the GDP. They will never recover. It's going to be like Greece. And we've seen the initiative, which is kind of to back it up by the frozen, you know, so we are starting the securitization of this. So the interest is now okay. Securitization is next. And at the end of the day, I mean, depending on the political outcome of the American election, of course, but also of the European election, which is going to be on Sunday, there is a very clear scenario by which, in fact, the only additional available money for the support of Ukraine will be those frozen assets. So maybe the reality will kick in. And then we understand that there's this Council of Europe sponsored register, which starts with the natural persons, but and now I'm starting to answer the question, the legal entities should also be able to claim for the destruction of property and also lost income. So it's going, but as long as we don't have a consensus within, let's say, the West, broadly speaking, that those assets should be should be and can be used for that. There's no money to cover for that, I suppose. That's my understanding of where the debate stands right now. Progressing.
Thanks, Božidar. Anyone else would like to express view on the Russian frozen assets? I take silence as a no. I think we have just a couple of minutes to wrap up. First of all, I would like to say a huge thank you to all our panelists. It was great. Thanks for honest opinions, for not making it rosy and sugar coated, but given the true snapshot of what of a fairly challenging situation we are facing today. At the same time, I think it would be fair to say that we all aim to stay optimistic. There are scopes for improvement in the investment climate in Ukraine, even in the at the times of the war. There are things that are in control of the state, of the stakeholders. There are certain categories of investors who, and I think Božidar and Makar made lots of good points about it, who are ready to come to Ukraine now with different agenda. We obviously want to see a bigger spectrum of investors and initiatives that Stefan mentioned, and JP Morgan will hopefully push more people towards towards investing in Ukraine. And what DFC and other IFIs are doing at the moment is remarkable, because they have resources to support the country, and we all hope it continues to do so. And it will be a big boost for businesses in Ukraine and foreign investors coming to the country to help to rebuild Ukraine. So once again, thank you so much to our panelists. Thanks to UBA, Mykola, Tatiana, and to the audience for asking interesting questions. It's been great, and thanks for your time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Olga, for an excellent session. We had a lot of provoking thoughts, provoking ideas, some discussions in the chat. Some disagreement about it. I hope we will take forward this and take it without further ado to the next session, which is a presentation of the report Unlocking Investment in Ukraine. And Olga, do you have a few words to say to pass it over to the next session?
Well, I just want to say that it's a fantastic event. Thank you for organizing, and I look forward to hearing more tomorrow, especially on the interesting topics that my good old friend Dan Cousins is going to moderate. So good luck to everyone, and as we say in France, bonne continuation.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, thank you so much for the previous panel. And moving on, I suppose Maria will take it from here. Right, Maria? Are you with us?
Thank you so much, Mykola and previous speakers. It's my great honor to be part of today's discussion. I'm really grateful for the Ukrainian Bar Association to organize this investment forum for the first time, and to bring together the ideas that the role that legal services can play in increasing investment into Ukraine and unlocking investment in Ukraine. My name is Maria Timofyenko. I am a Ukrainian lawyer who for the last 10 years I live in the UK, in London. I am the head of projects at the Ukrainian International Law Response Task Force at the British Institute for International and Comparative Law. We have set up this task force at the beginning of the war to bring together leading international minds, legal minds, to help Ukraine overcome the consequences of the devastating war. And today I'm really grateful for the opportunity to present the results of the report that we have prepared together with the UK Ministry of Justice. on unlocking investment in Ukraine. I am delighted that I will be joined for today's session by a very distinguished British judge, Sir Robin Knowles, judge of the High Court of England and Wales. I hope Sir Robin is already with us on the line, who will outline some of his thoughts on what next steps Ukraine can take in terms of advancing commercial dispute resolution system in Ukraine to aid investment, and also what practical steps can Ukraine take in terms of implementation of the project recommendations that have been outlined in our report. I will be also joined by Brian Hain, who is a representative of the Ministry of Justice of the United Kingdom. I hope Brian is with us.
Hello.
Brian, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I will pass the floor to Brian now, who will tell us a few words about the origins of the project that we have worked on together.
Cool.
Brian,
Hello, everyone.
Please, it's your floor.
Hello, everyone. As Maria's just said, my name is Brian Haynes, and I'm a policy advisor in the UK Ministry of Justice Ukraine response team. The Unlocking Investment in Ukraine project and resulting report has been a key area of focus for my team. The project has showcased positive UK-Ukrainian partnering, its origins coming from last year's Ukraine Recovery Conference in London, which focused on international discussion on how best to facilitate private sector investment in Ukraine. Both Ukrainian and Ministry of Justice colleagues then agreed on the need to have a thorough evidence-backed examination of reforms for Ukraine's judicial system that can spur on foreign investment. We understood that judicial systems and institutions that are reliable, resilient, and transparent can boost foreign investors' confidence in investing in countries. This is vital for Ukraine's current and post-war reconstruction and the prosperity of Ukraine's economy and society, ensuring Ukraine wins the peace as well as the war. We were delighted to partner with Maria and the team at the British Institute of International Comparative Law after asking them to conduct a research exercise to identify reform recommendations for Ukraine's judicial system. These reforms would help spur on investor confidence and funding in Ukraine. Maria and her team demonstrated professionalism, dedication, and openness throughout. In April 2024, Maria and her team delivered their impressive exercise and public report. We were delighted to also support the visit of an impressive delegation from Ukraine at the time, including judges and politicians. We have been encouraged by how many highly influential people who work in the UK justice, like Sir Robin Knowles, have embraced this opportunity to support Ukraine in its reforms. My team remains committed to Ukraine's success and the triumph of the cause of justice. Thank you again for your time, and that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. It's incredible to work with such a committed team who has a lot of experience and work in partnership really with the Ministry of Justice. And also, it is wonderful that the ministry has recognized the opportunity that Ukraine has in terms of developing its legal services and judiciary to assist and attract private investment in Ukraine. And your leadership on this is really important to keep going and bring in expertise from the UK very established legal services market, from the UK internationally recognized judiciary. I would like to now share the screen of my presentation, if I can succeed with that. So I'll just try to share some slides so I can present the results of our report. it may take a few seconds, so apologies for that. I hope you can now see the screen and the slides. So I would like now to outline a little bit more in detail.
I'm not sure we can see the slides. Can you check?
Okay. Let me just see. I'll try to reset again the sharing of the slides. If not, I'll just kick off without them. Sorry about that. While the slides are downloading, I will just explain you a little bit more about the scope and the purpose of our research project. This was a rather comprehensive and intensive piece of work that has been taken or completed within 3 months. And the objective was to identify solutions that Ukraine can apply to encourage international commercial investment by creating confidence in its legal system among investors. The priority for us was to engage with business, international business that is considering to invest in Ukraine or is already investing in Ukraine, and to understand what are the main concerns that the international business face when investing in Ukraine, and consider what steps can Ukraine take in the short term while the war is still continuing, what can be done to improve the protection of investment in Ukraine, but also to consider some ideas for long-term recovery that may put Ukraine really on the map as a center of excellence for international dispute resolution. It is a very important thought that the legal services is not just facilitating the investment, but also in itself it's a driver for economy, can be a significant and important driver for economy. For example, in the UK, the legal services market in 2023 has itself brought £34 billion to the economy. So Ukraine can follow the examples of advanced jurisdictions where the dispute resolution is actually a very important market and economy driver. So in terms of what we have done in our report, or I think my slides have downloaded now, which is the team has assisted me with that. Thank you so
Maria,
much.
I will help you to share your slides, okay?
Oh, wonderful,
Just
wonderful.
say me the next slide.
Okay, thank you so much. So in terms of next slide, please, we will look at what we have undertaken in terms of work, and we focused on reviewing judicial reform efforts that Ukraine has done since its independence in 1991, and dived into the issues and achievements that Ukraine has achieved since 2016 judicial reform. We looked at what current dispute resolution options are available to investors in Ukraine, including national courts, arbitration, and bilateral investment treaties. And also we focused on the international expertise, international experience on how other jurisdictions have set up international commercial courts. We looked at established jurisdictions such as London and New York, but also at more recent jurisdictions that have set up international commercial courts such as Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Kazakhstan, and Singapore. as well as looked at European Union examples of specialized commercial courts. As I mentioned, the focus of the research was to understand the business perspective on the obstacles that exist in Ukraine for investors. So we conducted a survey that followed up with interviews with a wide range of investors. And we also interviewed Ukrainian judiciary to understand what is their perspective on the current dispute resolution situation in Ukraine and what they think may be opportunities for improvement, as well as whether it would be desirable to set up a specialized investment court, potentially modeling on some international experience that exists elsewhere. So the report is now publicly available on Bikl website and is being translated into Ukrainian. So you are very welcome to look at it in greater detail, to look at the work we have conducted. Just to summarize on the next slide, if I may, main findings of our work. The key, of course, that is very important to underline is the resilience of the Ukrainian judicial system despite of the destruction caused by war. Ukrainian courts continue to deliver justice. They process a significant amount of cases, which are even coming back to the same level as before the war started. The courts work hand in hand with parliament and other authorities to ensure that procedures are more flexible. There is the use of online conferencing and digital solutions to ensure access to justice, even when physical access may be difficult. The other strengths of the system in Ukraine is existent specialization of commercial courts and hence in-depth expertise of judges within those courts who have a lot of experience of dealing with investment disputes. This is really a opportunity for Ukraine to build more capacity using already existent specialization. We also have identified that through our interviews and through research that Ukraine has a developed arbitration system, including the International Commercial Arbitration Court as part of the Chamber of Commerce of Ukraine. Since 2017, reforms related to arbitration have significantly improved the quality of arbitration, the expertise of judges in dealing with arbitral awards recognition and enforcement. So there is a lot of positive developments in this area. Among remaining challenges that still are facing Ukrainian court system are the ongoing efforts to complete the judicial reform. Of course, huge progress has been done, and I know many of the people present on this call, on this conference, will be aware of those. But the ongoing challenges remain in terms of staff shortages in courts, significant backlog of disciplinary procedural cases against judges, difficulties in filling vacancies with qualified new judges, and this is an ongoing process that is happening following the reset of the High Qualification Commission of Judges and High Council of Justice. So hopefully these issues are currently being addressed and will be resolved soon, so the courts can regain their capacity and fulfill their obligations to provide access to justice. The other concerns and challenges that remain are cases of corruption within the judiciary and legal services sector, which are being dealt at the high level by the law enforcement agencies and relevant courts. And the other issues concerning enforcement of court decision and implementation of arbitral awards, where there is still a lot of work to be done, specifically in relation to increasing the efficiency of state bailiffs and expanding the scope of activities of private bailiffs. In terms of next slide, if I may ask, I would like to share some of the perspectives from the business that we have heard during our service, and I would want also to say thank you to all those who have contributed. Many participants present today have assisted us with disseminating the survey results, including American Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Ukrainian Bar Association, and other partners who have helped us to reach out to a broad range of businesses. So the conclusions are that currently business still relies on international arbitration and prefers foreign courts to bring in cases in Ukrainian courts, and prefers using foreign laws rather than Ukrainian law. The business have provided us with feedback that they found that enforcing of arbitration awards has improved over recent years. However, there is still scope for improvement. They are concerned about lack of independence of courts and cases of corruption. And in terms of setting up a specialized investment court, the feedback was that there is a high level of interest in setting up a standalone commercial court, and like about half of the respondents thought that the best format would be to set up an international financial center court based on international financial court models like Kazakhstan, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, and others. So in terms of feedback from judges, again, we have received a very open engagement from judges with very detailed answers as to how they see the system may improve. The key issues that the judges felt would require capacity building was that need to provide more training and capacity building on learning foreign law, training on commercial dispute resolution, investment disputes, and also the need to increase the level of foreign language command among judges, being able to read decisions in foreign languages. Predominantly, the need to improve the command of English. Those are the areas that would be very much welcomed by the judiciary to assist them. And the response in terms of the setting up a standalone commercial court to deal with investment disputes was less welcomed by the judges, although there was a certain percentage of judges that felt it will be helpful. And specifically, they thought that the best model would be to set up a international or a specialized investment court within the Ukrainian court system, rather than an independent court outside the court system. And judges are generally very open to collaboration with other jurisdictions, with other judges, and would welcome an opportunity to exchange their experiences and learn from other jurisdictions. So it's gives us confidence that there is an opportunity to help build existent system and increase capacity in it. In terms of our recommendations, we have next slide, please, if I may ask. We have divided our recommendations into two parts, namely enhancing solutions and creating innovative ideas, implementing innovative ideas. On enhancing solutions, we have already have already outlined some of the issues which exist in terms of increasing the use of arbitration, promoting the use of arbitration as a successful tool, enhancing Ukrainian court practice and procedure, developing digital court, e-court solutions, and optimizing and making court procedure more effective. I've covered the issue of need to improve enforcement situation with court decisions, but also with arbitral awards, and the need for further capacity building and training for judges, both in terms of commercial law, but also in terms of language command of language. We then looked at what, next slide please, if I may ask, what innovative ideas could Ukraine employ that would be designed to help Ukraine build on its existing strengths, but also design solutions that will put Ukraine on the map as a regional center of excellence for international business, but also, of course, assist Ukrainian business in enforcing their rights. And some of the key models that we looked at and thought that Ukraine could benefit from are outlined in the next slide, please. Yes, so we looked at the idea of the possibility of setting up a financial center court based on Kazakhstan, based on Dubai, Abu Dhabi model, which would require a setup of financial center and potentially creation of an exclusive economic zone. This court would be a separate court from domestic legal system. It would feature both foreign and domestic judges working alongside each other, and would have capacity to hear cases in foreign languages, most likely in English. It could provide a fast-track enforcement option, and it could handle cases against state-owned enterprises. While this is really a big opportunity for Ukraine, it possesses significant challenges, as it would require changes to constitution of Ukraine, and also would require Ukraine to overcome issues associated with sovereignty of involving foreign judges. The next model that we looked at is a hybrid model based on Singapore experience, which is a setting up of a court within Ukrainian system that would also have foreign judges. This option is would enable for investors to feel that first to conduct cases in English or another foreign language. There would be an opportunity to consider cases under both Ukrainian and foreign laws, and it would allow for Ukrainian judges to work together with international judges to build their expertise in the areas of commercial law. Unlike the first model, this would be part of the Ukrainian court system. The drawbacks would be, again, the need to change constitution, and again, issues around the sovereignty of foreign judges. Then the third model that we looked at was the creation of a specialized court within the Ukrainian judicial system, based on the model that Ukraine already has created, like a high anti-corruption court that successfully operates in Ukraine, and also following other in European jurisdictions, including London, Netherlands, Paris, and Frankfurt. This court would be within the Ukrainian court system, and would incorporate elements of foreign and domestic law, which actually exists already now in Ukrainian courts. Ukrainian courts can consider cases with using foreign law, even at this stage. But having a specialized court that deals with investment disputes, an opportunity to increase the capacity of judges in such court would be a great opportunity for Ukraine. And on a positive side, it would not require constitutional changes, but difficulties may arise in terms of delineating jurisdiction of such court from other courts that are currently considering investment cases, including commercial courts, potential administrative courts, and other courts. And finally, the idea which would benefit Ukraine is the setup of Kyiv International Arbitration Center that would benefit from diverse panel of eminent arbitrators working alongside Ukrainian arbitrators in mixed tribunals. The cases can be heard both in foreign and domestic law, and the proceedings may be in foreign languages, predominantly in English, and such center could also offer mediation services. The setup of such center needs, of course, to be implemented in collaboration with existing arbitration bodies in Ukraine, such as International Court for Arbitration, which we already referred to. And the downside of it is that the enforcement will remain and arbitral awards recognition will be remaining within the Ukrainian court system. So, of course, the implementation of such innovative ideas would require political will and commitment from Ukrainian policymakers and stakeholders and expert community and business community. We are delighted that during the launch of our project, we benefited from the support and participation of Ukrainian Minister of Justice, Maluska, the Deputy Head of the Presidential Office, Irina Mudra, and we also were delighted that a group of Supreme Court judges were able to share their views and thoughts on the findings of the report, and that Denis Maslov, the head of the Legal Policy Committee at the Parliament, was also contributing with his ideas. So there is a lot of opportunity to help Ukraine implement some of these ideas, which will allow Ukraine to leapfrog other countries and to become an internationally recognized center for dispute resolution. And from British perspective, many judges, and we have heard from very distinguished judges during the roundtable and presentation of our report, that they are willing to contribute and help Ukraine and build capacity of Ukrainian courts and dispute resolution system. So without further delay, I would like to invite Sir Robin Knowles to join me and share his thoughts on how Ukraine can benefit from the support of international judges and international experience. If Sir Robin is already on the line, I would welcome you to take the floor.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Maria, and a good afternoon to everybody. My name is Robin Knowles. I'm a judge of the Commercial Court of England and Wales, and I'm also the judge with day-to-day responsibility for the Standing International Forum of Commercial Courts. That's the global forum of the world's commercial courts, which now numbers 58 jurisdictions in its membership, including 70% of the G20 nations. The first thing I wanted to say is how valuable the report is and how proud I am of the UK Ministry of Justice for supporting its development. of course, I come at this matter as a judge, but I hope there's a few thoughts that I can contribute. I'm just mindful of the timing and wondered if I could check as to how long on the timing of the schedule now I may take. I can tailor my remarks to whatever time limit applies.
So, Robin, I would probably say roughly 5 minutes. We are slightly overrun, but that's not a problem. Will that be sufficient for you?
It certainly will. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
The starting point, and in London, we found this is the crucial starting point, is to think of the users of the courts. And by users, I mean business, all those involved in business. I don't mean the legal profession. I don't mean the judges. But when I say business users, I mean local, regional, national, international. And of course, our focus at the moment in this discussion is on the investment community, but also the involvement in business of an entire country. Crucial to users is confidence. And in this area, confidence derives in particular from the presence of expertise in a dispute resolution system and the presence of independence, which is a key source of trust. Things like time and cost matter too, but expertise, independence are absolutely in the front row. And it's not just the tribunal that the business community is looking at here. It's looking at the bench, yes, or the panel, but also at the legal profession and others in the legal ecosystem. It's really important that there's a collaborative endeavor in this respect. It's also today been our experience that one needs a dispute resolution system which comprises courts and mediation and arbitration. They're all needed, and each needs the other. Sometimes, indeed, in a single dispute, they can integrate. There's a range of choices, and this is what is so exciting and full of potential for Ukraine, as it strikes me. There's a range of choices as to how to develop a dispute resolution system, including from a starting point that is as strong as Ukraine has. One can develop the existing architecture. One can add to the existing architecture, and one can add separate components alongside the existing architecture. It's really important to look at each of those approaches, and there are many details and examples already in the world that can allow a very informed choice. The report makes a good start on that, but from that good start, a lot more detailed scrutiny can follow. And there are many dimensions, as Maria's presentation indicated, many dimensions of choice: national or international judges, law, language, enforcement, and the like. And just to illustrate how much a system needs all types of dispute resolution, just as some would say, well, arbitration has got an enforcement advantage because of the New York Convention, so a system that is just built on arbitration may find difficulty developing some of the precedent that can allow predictability within a system. Each part of the system needs the other. My central message before finishing is to say that we would love to be part of the varied community that would be willing to help here. We offer the experience that we've been lucky enough, privileged enough to develop in London over many, many years. And we're here to share it with you. But also, I'm pleased, we're here to share that alongside most of the other commercial jurisdictions in the world. And that is because of the organization SIFOC that I mentioned. That's a community of commercial and appellate judiciaries. It recently gathered at Doha with 2 intense days of conversation. That happens every 18 months, but between every one of those full meetings, there's the opportunity to spend time intensively, one jurisdiction with several others. And here is the way to look not just at an existing particular challenge, but the challenges that the world faces. One is obvious to everybody on this call, but also obvious is our ability to deal with disputes about AI, our ability to get the right legal framework for decisions where commerce, corporate activity, and the environment or climate change coincide. There's a shared need to look at problems that are new to everyone. And it was with the greatest of pride that when I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, there were 58 jurisdictions that were members of SIFOC. The 58th is Ukraine. And for that, we owe a tribute not only to Bickel and the UK Ministry of Justice, but to the Supreme Court and the Commercial Cassation Court of Ukraine above all. SIFOC is delighted to have that 58th member, and the opportunity is there in the shared interest to make the most of it. And making the most of it will allow the best possible exploration of the choices that Maria outlined. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Sir Robin. Thank you, Maria, for the excellent report. This actually brings us, it's a great segue to our next session. And I'm asking colleagues from the next session to join. And while they are switching on their videos, I would like to make a few comments from us, from the legal community in Ukraine, about what has Maria mentioned and what Sir Robin mentioned. We all are aware that we are trying to promote investment in Ukraine and to build a sustainable system, both investment system and legal system in Ukraine. And we are open, of course, to all sorts of ideas, creative ideas, as Maria mentioned, but we also have to be realistic about the fact that we want Ukraine to stay independent, strong and sovereign. And I think that the next session will be a lot about what progress Ukraine has achieved. I only wanted to make just 2 or 3 very brief comments. One thing you mentioned, and many people overlook that to create a separate court that would be completely outside of the current judiciary, I would like to underscore that you need to change the constitution, and that's not a practical solution. I would completely take it off the table. The changes in the constitution are not possible in the wartime, and they are very difficult even in the peacetime. So this is not practical. Another thing is that if you talk about, you mentioned enforcement still will be required in Ukraine. That's true, but I don't think this is a negative side. We are talking about investments and business in Ukraine. So in any event, enforcement will be required in Ukraine. It's inconceivable to think about enforcement elsewhere, except for very few minor cases where a respondent has some assets outside of Ukraine. So in any event, you have to, if you were to invest in Ukraine, and if you were to have a dispute, you'll have to deal with the jurisdiction to the full extent. Now, when you talk about the scope of review of that potential new judicial institution, you also have to think about the types of disputes that foreign investors usually face in Ukraine. And you're absolutely right that when you're dealing with investment disputes where an investor is facing problems from the government under a contract, investment contract, let's say a privatization contract, or energy in the energy area, a production sharing agreement, that's completely understood. And I think there is no doubt that English law is and English courts are best for this. But the majority of disputes are actually more mundane. It's tax, it's employment, could be real estate, etc. And we have a justice of the Supreme Court with us who will tell us more about this. It's very unlikely and almost impossible to transfer all of these disputes in all of these multitude of areas to other foreign courts. Now, what is good and where we can use the experience of English judicial system is those disputes between the government, where government is licensing something or selling public property. Ukrainian legislation already has positive examples of this, namely in the privatization legislation that allowed actually for the investors buying state property on privatization auctions to regulate their contract under English law and use dispute resolution, foreign dispute resolution for that. So I encourage everyone who is thinking about this. We really encourage all the creative ideas, but you have to be pragmatic. I'll stop here. I see our moderator, Dan Cousins, here with me. I see my esteemed colleagues here as well. And we'll be happy to take it from here and talk more about myths, misconceptions, and pragmatic solutions. Thank you so much. Dan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mykola. Great to see you, and hi everybody, and thank you to the previous for the previous session, which was really interesting. My name is Daniel Cousins. I'm a partner with Linklaters based in our Warsaw office, and for many years, I think it's 17, possibly 18 now, I've been focusing on Ukraine, on doing as much as M&A as possible in Ukraine, whether for international clients or for Ukrainian clients. And so the session this afternoon is to talk about and hopefully bust some of the common myths or misperceptions or perceptions which people have about doing business in Ukraine. And I'm happy to say that I'm dialing in from Kiev. I'm very happy to be here. And we have an amazing panel. We're kind of overqualified with this panel, I think. So let me quickly introduce you to who we have. We have Olena Kibenko, who is a judge with the Supreme Court of Ukraine. Hi, Elena, good to see you. We have Anna Babic, who is a partner with Akwo. Hi, Anna, great to see you too. Tatiana Dovgan, also a partner with CMS Camera McKenna. Hi, Tatiana, I think you're here, although I don't see you. Hello, great to see you.
Hi, I'm here.
Fantastic, great to see you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Great.
We have Mykola, who needs no introduction. And we have Vladimir Senko, partner with Senko Horenko. Great to have you with us. Jumping straight in, Vladimir, I think a lot of foreign investors, business people out there might think that Ukraine is a difficult place from the regulatory perspective, and that there are lots of regulatory hurdles and paperwork and difficulties to overcome. Particularly if you're talking about acquiring a Ukrainian business or a Ukrainian business as part of a bigger acquisition. Can you tell us a bit about what approvals might one expect to have to get if you're a foreign acquirer of a Ukrainian business?
Absolutely. Well, both of us are M&A lawyers, so we know that in the acquisition context, typically we look at three groups of regulatory formalities. Let's refer broadly to them like that. The first one is merger clearance and other competition law approvals, such as in Ukraine, a very common approval for concerted practices that is often relevant in the context of an M&A transaction. The second group is regulatory approvals, but these are usually relevant in case of acquisition of significant interest in certain industries, like in banking and financial sector, or when you deal with securities brokers and other professional participants of the securities market. And finally, the third group, these are not even approvals, but these are essentially substantial shareholding disclosure rules for various acquisitions of shares in public joint stock companies.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And actually, I didn't hear FDI. So we see a lot of FDI approvals being required in kind of other countries in Europe in particular over the last few years. Is that something we should be keeping in mind? Is that an issue, not an issue?
There is a reason why you didn't hear the magic three word, and that the reason is Ukraine is one of the last jurisdictions in Europe that does not have FDI screening legislation, and that's a problem in my view. It's a problem for the country because the state needs to control foreign investment in military sector and other sensitive industries. It is also a problem for the investors because lack of specific FDI screening regime means that the state will find other ways to perform its functions, but the process will not be transparent. And that's always not good compared to jurisdictions where you know what to expect. For example, in the extreme cases, merger clearance process can be delayed or even criminal proceedings may be opened that are likely to spoil the deal for national security reasons. That's exactly the reason why several years ago an attempt was made to develop FDI legislation in Ukraine. The draft law was written, but it was heavily criticized for far-reaching broad language and for lack of objective criteria. Currently, some work in this area continues. I hope that very soon we will be discussing with you some new legislative proposals. But in this context, I want to emphasize a very difficult task of finding the right balance between sanctions policy and national security interests on the one hand, and the need to keep the jurisdiction attractive for international investors on the other hand. This can be illustrated by one example, which just happens to be very current. So I think I would like to share it with you. As you all know, Ukraine imposed a number of sanctions on the individuals and companies that support the Russian war against Ukraine. However, the attempts to seize the property of sanctioned persons were not successful in many cases because these large businesses use complex holding structures. The sanctioned person may be one of the shareholders at the top or at the holding company somewhere outside of Ukraine. Ukraine simply lacks jurisdiction to seize these shares. Instead, the government decided to go after the low-hanging fruit, after the Ukrainian operating companies of these groups. A draft law was prepared, misleadingly called on the mechanism for protection of rights of third persons, was registered in the parliament, and it provides for the possibility for Ukraine to seize the shares in a Ukrainian operating company. In return, the ultimate beneficiaries and other minority shareholders from the top companies who are not sanctioned will receive shares directly in the Ukrainian operating company. Well, I think you can immediately understand that this is a big problem. It essentially deprives innocent shareholders of their shares in a business. The adoption of this legislation will be a disaster, not only for the relevant business groups, some of which may not even know that they have a minority shareholder in a public company, who bought shares and who happens to be sanctioned. But I think it will be a disaster for Ukraine because it will face numerous claims in international tribunals if legislation like that is implemented. Luckily, this time, the Ukrainian, I think almost all Ukrainian business associations unanimously opposed this draft law. And in fact, yesterday was removed from the agenda of the parliamentary committee that was expected to recommend it for adoption very quickly. It's a small victory, but clearly not an end of the process. I hope it's just a good illustration of the fact that the civil society in Ukraine is strong and that the voice of business will be heard. You just need to shout very loudly if you want to be heard.
It's really interesting. I mean, so you mentioned FDI. You basically think that there will be an FDI regime coming into place, and you kind of sounds like you're in favor of that. The whole question around nationalization, I agree, that's very difficult actually, especially where you have, sanctioned individuals at the top, and it's a multi-jurisdictional, multi-asset group. Very, very, very tricky. I mean, that's a thorny question, but interesting that that kind of got turned back. Can I ask you about merger clearance? I mean, my experience has mostly been on the merger side. That it used to be the case that you'd have to get a merger filing in Ukraine for almost any transaction you did, even with which had nothing to do with Ukraine at all in reality. Is that still the case? And can you tell us a little bit about what's been going on with the anti-monopoly committee in the last 2 or 3 years in terms of changes, whether positive or negative?
Yes, absolutely. The main reason why merger clearance in Ukraine is often on the agenda of international investors is because indeed the relevant thresholds are quite low. And so even smaller transactions are likely to require merger clearance. That by itself is not a big problem, especially because these thresholds tend to be proportionate to the GDP and the size of the economy, so they actually make sense. I think a bigger problem is the fact that sometimes this merger clearance obligation arises when the transaction has nothing to do with the jurisdiction with Ukraine. Now, indeed, your recollection is very correct. In the past, that was a big issue, but legislation was revised several years ago to take care of that problem, and then some recent changes fine-tuned and I think completed the process. So in my view, it's no longer a problem, it's a myth. Even more, I would add to this that another myth is that the competition agency is inefficient, that the process is slow, and that you need to provide some ridiculously irrelevant information in that process, in that formalistic process. That is also a thing from the past, which I can understand why 10 or 20 years ago that was relevant, but all the applicable regulations of the competition agency were revised recently, and now the requirements are relevant and substantive in my view. Even if you find some issue that is difficult, perhaps it's unreasonably burdensome for you to collect certain information, the parties have the right to ask for a waiver from the competition agency, and in our experience, well-substantiated requests for waivers are usually satisfied.
Thanks. Anna, I wanted to ask you actually, what do you think about, do you agree with that? How do you rate the competency of the AMC and its these days?
I just echo the Vladimir say, indeed they are progressing. Also, of course, during the war, there was some turbulence. They were like not working for half a year until June 2022. But generally, they are progressing on the like being more and more compliant with the practice that we see in Europe. And now, for example, they started investigating the e-markets, which is a bit of a new for them, but they are following the sort of modern trend. We're a little bit far behind, but generally, of course, we don't see those sort of outdated, weird requests anymore. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And maybe last up, Vladimir, can you, I don't think I know about the substantial shareholding disclosure rules. Can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of what that involves for a foreign acquirer?
That's probably one of those areas where you don't know about them exactly for a reason, because they're typically not problematic. Frankly, in my experience, I mean, I hear some complaints about the merger review process. I hear even more complaints, but of course, this is a very narrow group of clients that invest in the financial sector, that buy banks, and indeed, it's not easy to get the approvals from the National Bank of Ukraine. So that I can understand. You need to at least be well prepared to participate in that process. When it comes to the substantive shareholding disclosure rules, that is perhaps least of the problems. First, because we copied the regulation from the EU directives, essentially. We did not invent it. So most of our clients are well familiar with the principles. They understand the requirements. They don't see them as unreasonably burdensome. The information that is required to be provided to the Securities Commission, to the issuer of securities, and to the stock exchange on certain occasions is relevant, relates to the actual transaction. It's a formality that lawyers typically will do with their eyes closed and without even bringing it to the attention of the client. So I've never heard a client complain about some delays or problems caused by this particular process because clients are not involved in them at all, as opposed to some of these merger clearance or regulatory approvals for banks where clients need to provide a lot of information, and sometimes the process is unpredictable. You actually have to prepare well in order to ensure a smooth and reliable result at the end.
Thank you. Okay, we could probably spend a lot longer on the topic, but it sounds like you're saying that the myth or the perception that Ukraine is a very burdensome market in terms of regulatory approvals. It sounds like you're saying that is largely not really correct, and actually that in terms of merger clearance, there's been a lot of improvements recently. Regulatory approvals, okay, you need them in the regulated sector. That'd be the same in many jurisdictions. Substantial shareholding rules, not a problem.
Yeah, I can give you a couple of figures just to illustrate that. On the merger control process, I think it's the easiest illustration. Our agency reviews about 600 merger applications every year, roughly. Only 4.5% of those go into phase 2. And that means they may require up to half a year, for example, for the whole process. The timeline is similar to other jurisdictions, but with respect to 95%, the remaining part, they are all cleared typically within 45 calendar days. Now, there are occasional hiccups. You see, we know how the agency can play with this timeline. And so they would return the documents arguing that they're incomplete, and that delays the process by 15 days. But if you can build this into your transaction timeline, if you know that, okay, I need 60 days for the process before the long stop date, then you're fine, essentially. And in fact, in our experience, recently we see more and more fast track applications being processed. Fast track means that you have your clearance within 25 days. So I think that is clearly normal. That's the same as you see in other jurisdictions. And that's exactly the message that the competition agency tries to convey when they participate in every international conference. They say, we are open for business. The fact that the war is going does not mean that you have an excuse not to comply with your obligation to obtain merger clearance. And I only support that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vladimir. I wanted to talk about the Ukrainian commercial courts. Olena, thank you very much for being with us. Obviously, the previous session was very much about what are issues for resolving commercial disputes in the Ukrainian system currently, and what are the things you might think about in terms of changes or alternatives. And there's a lot of, I think there's historically been quite a lot of negative perception about the court system and resolution of commercial disputes. You're a judge, Helena, of the Supreme Court. What can you tell us about some of the common perceptions? What about time? You know, how long does it take to get cases resolved?
Hello, everyone. Actually, many people, including many foreign investors, believe that the time for adjudication of commercial cases exceptionally long in Ukraine. I would like to show you some figures on my slide. Try to share it. I hope you see it.
We see it. Yeah, we do see it.
Yeah.
You need to run the slideshow.
And as you can see from this slide, this perception is this myth. This perception is not true, not correct. The slide shows us the average time taken to process cases in Ukraine, and this data shows that on average a case is considered in all 3 instances within 6 months. And regarding the Supreme Court, sorry. No.
Yep.
I'm show another slide. So, and you can see the Supreme Court doing extremely well. For example, if we compare our review periods with those of foreign Supreme Courts, we will see that we review cases much faster than our colleagues abroad. Of course, I completely understand that these are average figures and the so-called average temperature of patient in the ward. And every litigation lawyer and investors, I think, can name the cases considered for years. Unfortunately, we have no statistics on how many cases considered within the time limits provided by our procedural code, or how many cases are considered up to 6 months, up to 1 year, more than 1 year. However, I can rely on specific indicators. In Ukraine, each case has a specific number, and the last digit from this number shows us the year the lawsuit was filed. And now most of our cases have the numbers ended 2023. What does it mean? That means that all these cases were started in 2023, and I think it's good for our commercial court system. And I'm completely sure that within 1 month or 2 months, we will see here in the cassation court the cases with the last number 2024. That means they were adjudicated by our instance court during this year. And we still work on this topic. I would like to say we try to speed up the case management, adjudication cases, and we see, we think that that is our strategical goal of the Supreme Court and other commercial court, because it's our strength. It's very important for business. It's very important for litigants, for lawyers, and we would like to proceed to improve our statistics. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. That's interesting. I don't know what the equivalent statistics would be for England, for example. I sort of suspect they'd be a bit longer, but we'd have to get Sir Robin Knowles back to tell us about that. But and what about? I think people sometimes believe that the Supreme Court often sends cases back, that it bounces cases back for new hearings on a very regular basis. Is that true, or is that also a myth?
I don't think so, and I would like to show you the figure from another slide. This slide shows that the Supreme Court cancelled the decision and sent cases back for new trial in 16% of reviewed cases. Yes, I think that this figure is still high. However, it is because the Supreme Court is a court of law, not the court of fact, and significant percentage of new reviews are due to the poor work of lower courts, who fail to establish the facts necessary for the case to be decided. In fact, I have to admit that there were popular saying among cassation judges, if you don't know what to do, just send the case to the first instance. Or, for example, it's roll. It was funny, but I think that we have now another time. And the Supreme Court has been paying attention to this problem and has been tracking the statistics. Yeah, I have to admit that there are still judges with a high percentage of so-called new hearing, about 30 and even 50% of the cases they review. On the contrary, we have judges with a really small, tiny percentage of the new hearings. I'm talking about, for example, 2%, 6%, 8%. For me, for example, my figure is about 8 or 9%. So I understand that we need to continue working on this topic and to improve again our statistics, but it's not so bad as usually people talk and the foreign investors talk about us. And I think what we can do in this direction. First of all, I would like to mention that our procedural court done a lot to resolve this problem. It has significantly limited the possibility to send the cases for new trial. The problem that is not all judges paid due attention to the new rules and continue to work as usual, as they used to do. So we just need to communicate, to describe, to explain this new approach. Secondly, judges sometimes cannot divide the matter of fact and the matter of law, and that leads to unnecessary new trial. For example, if I ask you questions determining the amount of damages, is it a matter of fact, it's a matter of law? I completely sure that auditory will be divided answering these questions. So we also need to talk about it and it's prevent new unnecessary new trials and sending the cases to new trials. And I deliver many lectures for judges, and usually I always ask the judges to establish and prescribe the fact as fully as possible. If so, there is no need to send the cases to new trial, and the Supreme Court can issue a new decision. In my opinion, if there is an even slightest opportunity not to send the cases for a new trial, but to make a decision, we should use this opportunity.
Thank you. And maybe turning to the panel, anyone really, but perhaps Tatiana, I don't know if you have any, I'd be interested to know if you've got any comments on what you've heard, whether you agree, disagree. And I think there's maybe some things coming in over the chat. So Mikola, maybe you want to throw some of the chat questions in as well. Maybe Tatiana first, perhaps, if that's all right.
No, Dan, I generally wanted to say, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I generally wanted to say I do tend to agree with the sentiment that Olena is sharing. Kind of this is our experience as well as a firm, and just chatted with my litigation and arbitration colleagues, and yeah, before this panel, just to get their reflections. And yes, and they're very much aligned with what Olena is saying. I think that much work is being done there, and we're just generally extremely happy with the way that the courts operate, especially during the wartime. So no major concerns from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and in the chat, so we have a few questions. I'll start from the end, actually, from Igor Olechov, CMS, Cameron McKenna. The question actually is addressed to Olena, and it reads that the court statistics looks good. And what about weird court judgments and orders in cases of insolvent banks and recent cases of Igor Mazepa and similar? And Olena, are you comfortable of discussing some of these cases, or should we leave it to private discussions? But maybe just the general overview, if possible.
What I can say, I think the main problem of our commercial court is a quality, not terms, but quality of court decision. I constantly tell, and it's my idea, that we should improve the quality of our decision. We should answer to all arguments of the party, and not just write for decision without citation from the laws, and that improve the quality of our commercial court system as well. Not only terms, not only quantity of cases decided, but the quality of our decision that is the main topic actually. And I cannot comment concrete cases, but this is my view. That this is our strategic goal to improve the quality of our decision.
Absolutely. But I would also add to this that what is being done in the last 10 years is that to ensure quality of the decisions, there are various ways. One way is to inject more clarity into the material law, and this is happening all the time. But this is a never-ending kind of run. The second thing is procedural codes that have been substantially improved and that also streamline the processes. And thirdly, and I know that this is not the best argument, but still, you need to realize that based on statistics that Olena shared, there are appellate decisions, and the appellate level is working much better, and the cassation level is even better at the level of Supreme Court. But if you compare it to other countries, I'm pretty sure that the statistics will be quite similar. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any appellate levels in other jurisdictions. People disagree with court judgments, with court orders. That's normal. And that's why you have appellate level of review. So while we may disagree as practicing attorneys with some of these decisions, we need to have faith in the system, so to say.
Yeah, I would like to add something because we try to write clear and understandable, and our co-decision should be persuasive. Because party who lose the case, this party should understand the reason of that. If we just make some citation of laws and so on, this decision is not persuasive. So we have more appeals, we have more to the court of second instance, more appeals to the cassation court, because we cannot write clear, we don't answer the arguments. And usually, not usually, but very often, I can see in appeal that the party just say, court didn't answer my arguments. Court just rewrite, the court of appeal just rewrite what tell the court of first instance. And that is a problem, I think. We should do something with that.
Thank you, Elena. Then there is a second question about SME financing, but in my view, it makes sense for us to proceed. And once we hear the rest of the panelists, then we'll come back to that question.
Absolutely. I'm very interested in what Elena thinks about the BIICL report, but I thought maybe comes out at the end of the session if we have time. One last question to you now, Elena, is what about foreign law? Will Ukrainian commercial courts consider foreign law issues?
Actually, I think it's the common bias that in the case of conflict law, commercial courts don't apply foreign laws to solve the dispute, and they're trying to apply Ukrainian law under any circumstances. Unfortunately, we have no any statistics about application of the foreign law by our commercial court. However, I want to rely to my own experience. Since the beginning of this year, I had 4 cases in my proceeding where we applied the British Companies Act 2006 to decide the case. And if we search Ukrainian register of court decision, we will find about 80 decisions with reference to the British Companies Act, for example. It's very popular as a resource of law here in Ukraine because we deal with many British companies. And for example, in my recent case, we applied the law of 2 countries or 2 jurisdictions, one of them England and another, maybe if I'm not mistaken, it was Belize, to determine whether a company that had the staff of the register could participate in general meeting of shareholder of the Ukrainian company. Given that it's subsequently been restored to the register. It was a very interesting question, and unfortunately, I have a dissenting opinion in this case, but it doesn't matter. Our court applied foreign law to decide this case. In another case, we resolved the issue whether the director of the The British company had the authority and act in the best interest of this English company when entering into the transaction in Ukraine. And as well, we applied the Companies Act 2006 and also we applied some doctrine provisions to resolve this case. At the same time, I can agree that the application of foreign law by Ukrainian commercial courts not yet become common. Unfortunately, judges don't have the relevant skills, particularly those needed to determine the content of foreign law. Of course, we are still at the beginning of the process, and judges don't always understand, pay attention to the need to apply conflict law and then maybe foreign law to resolve the dispute with so-called international elements. There is a debate as to whether the court should determine the content of the law itself or rely on the parties. So it's a matter of law, a matter of fact again. And we have already received a response from the Great Chamber that the court determines the content itself, but it's not clear how to do that. For example, I have a bunch of books on British law. I know English. I can find the British Companies Act in the internet. But can I do that by my own? Or can I take the doctrinal interpretation of that law from my own books? Do I have to add this to the case docket? Should I do translations to other panel judges? So we have many, many questions and have no answers till now. And that's why I think that we do need this training that Judge Novels told us and Maria Timofeyenko told us about, because we need training in conflict laws, we need training in European laws, we need training how to apply foreign laws. And I think we need some training on language to improve our language capacity. Now we try to develop many projects. For example, one of the projects approached with the British Institute of International and Foreign Law and Comparative Law. Sorry, Maria represents this institute. This project supported by the UK Ministry of Justice, I hope. We joined CFOC, Sir Novels told us about that organization. And I think all this can improve our capacity, can strengthen our possibility to solve commercial cases and to get better results.
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, your English is perfect, by the way, Elena, so you don't need training with that.
I don't think so.
I'm sure your knowledge of English law is brilliant as well. Thank you. We've been too greedy with this panel. We've got too many topics and too many experts and not enough time. So I'm going to have to move on to the next one. I wanted to ask Anna. You're talking to existing investors, investors who are already committed to Ukraine, invested in the past, potential investors who may be thinking, looking to the future. I'd be interested in, what's on their minds. Like, what are the questions you're being asked as a practitioner? What are your clients, potential clients, kind of interested in?
Thank you, Dan. I'm just I think my screen.
We see it. Yep, we see it perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for Kola, and then it's great to be in such a fantastic company of great minds. Yeah, I'll try to be sort of positive and stay on the bright side of what's on investors' mind. And what we see now, first, we see them walking around and looking for some opportunity in Ukraine now, not just waiting for the end of the war, but understanding that at least 3 industries are of particular interest, importance, and opportunities. The defense, but that's a bit of specific, the infrastructure and energy, right? And some usual suspects like agro, processing, IT, but that's we've seen a lot. But now it's changing to like new emerging leaders, sort of which are really important for our rebuild. But of course, the first question would be the safety of the assets and the peculiarities of the Ukrainian martial law. That's obvious. And the second one, once the safety is a sort of a matter of fact, and we can only say that this is what it is, the lawyers always go to, okay, how to address those. And this should be a balance of the insurance opportunities and solutions and the sort of incentives which the investors will see in Ukraine is either the industrial parks or, for example, the city regime for IT companies, something like that. Something that the investors will see that they are welcomed and they are somehow guided and helped in Ukraine in such an extreme situation, backed up by the political and war risk insurances. There was one issue that was addressed also. Second or third question is about the currency control regime in Ukraine, which we try to hide eyes until the 3rd May of this year. And on Friday, we've been very happy to see that the National Bank finally made it move, which was promised in the last year. But in this year, they actually finally changed the regime substantially, and they addressed several important questions that investors were asking. I have this a little bit further on my presentation, so can we have a second slide, please?
Could I, sorry, before we move on, Anna, can you just tell us a little bit more about insurance? I mean, that comes up on
yeah, that's also there. So I'm not managing that. So if you can, or is it me? No, it's not me, Tanya. Can you move a little bit further, please, the presentation? Because oh, that's me. Sorry, that's me. Okay, national insurance. So we already touched base with the DFC presentation in the first panel, but to be honest, we see the limitation because it goes first either to some, CME state enterprises which used to work with the IFIs before, and they sort of qualified to go to DFC, but Ukrainian business and those who just trying to get the insurance first time, that's really a challenge, and it always been like discussed. So why Ukraine is not doing anything on the national level to address those? First reason why is sort of basically money and the budget, because even when we create this solution at the national level, then we still our budget is really limited, so we use it for some first urgent needs like social utilities, right? And we need to finance the war. So that was always been like lower priorities, but nevertheless, since this year, we have this Ukrainian export credit agency, ECA, we call it, that used to be in Ukraine. But since this year, the authority of this agency has been extended to issue this insurance, and not only for foreign investors, but same way to Ukrainian investors who continue to work in Ukraine. And there was one of the claims from Ukrainian businesses, look, we stay here, we work here, we also need the insurance to bring someone or to develop further. And that was heard by the sort of lawmakers. And we have this new solution since this year. And since April, the government approved the subordinate law that basically explained what are the risks, so what qualifies as the risk and the terms and so on. So it's relatively new, to be honest. That's untested regulation yet, but there is a progress, and Ukraine clearly understands that there should be a national solution for that, because the DFC and other, the MIGA, for example, right? So we have successful case of Dragon who got the EBRD, and the EBRD got for this investment MIGA solution, but the capacity of those institutions and the sort of the profile of their clients is quite different. So this is for like a CME, so the Ukrainian business, and we hope that it will work. We closely monitor that. That's in the interest of everyone who wants to see new faces in Ukraine. So we're really excited that it was done. Now the money and the proper process is the next stage, right? So that's our news on the insurance, that relatively new, as I said. So we'll see how it will be tested, but definitely we have the rules how to.
Thank you. And can I just jump back? You said that you've got clients calling you up, kind of who want to take kind of preparatory advice on future investments in infrastructure, and I think that's very interesting. You know, I mean, I sort of see lots of kind of theoretical level interest, lots of conferences, lots of discussions. But if you're getting, and actually it's a question to the panel, but if you're seeing people who are not active in Ukraine yet, actually coming to ask for specific advice, is that right? Is that the stage? Right?
Yeah. So I'm still optimistic. I see them. I see not just few, but some at this, I call it feasibility study. So they ask a lot of questions, quite specific, not just general. It's not about conferences, but they ask specific questions. For example, the last example as of yesterday was about basically the renewables, which is an extremely hot topic for Ukraine. Our generation capacities are completely destroyed. And that's it's a regulated industry. That's of course extreme conditions how to build it, but finally that's a huge opportunity because the government now takes the lead in helping the private business to build this decentralized generating capacities in Ukraine. We will only survive if the private business will come and do that. And I see from this industry, from there's European client that they're really interested. They don't know how to do business in Ukraine. They ask different level of questions. They're looking for a partner. So that's one of the things that I spotted. So we used to see nice M&A transactions here before the war, but I think this age is gone. So we will be back to this sort of 90s regime where there will be many greenfield projects. There will be JVs because the local partner, the trusted local partner, is a 50% of success now in Ukraine. That's local knowledge, local contacts, understanding of the urgency of the matters. So there will be a little bit different work comparing to what we used to have. But yeah, that's one of the good examples. Another is the defense, but quite a specific area. Again, lots of opportunities for those who knows how to do that, but that's interaction with the government that it's even more complicated.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe we can you can just tell us a bit about currency control, kind of, because I know that's a huge issue for people who are looking at a high level. They'll say, well, I can invest, but if I can't take my profits out, or I can't get my loans repaid, then how does that work? So yeah, tell us about what's
this is really like a big move for Ukrainian central bank. It's been discussed a lot because any discussion with the potential private equity investors who want to see the opportunities is the return and how they address the return issue to the limited partners. So that when there is a complete ban to the distribution of dividends, that's a no-go. Right, and then was highly discussed that, look, if you invite investors into Ukraine, you should at least tell when you address this issue and this ban to be uplifted. And that finally happened in May. And they addressed basically, if in simple words, the four aspects. So the outbound payments for the works and services, which were previously just banned, now it's allowed. So it's a sort of normal regime. Then they had the loans. They have both the prepayment of the loans itself and the percents, the interest that was like, again, in Ukraine. They have specific rules for the interest and the if there was the true loans, not just granted yesterday, but those which will be in place in the beginning of the war, and there was not the sort of overdue payments before the war, so it was a good loan which was serviced, then the interests are allowed to be repaid. There is a limit. It's 1 million euro or the equivalent for the quarter, so 4 million a year, and that until the end of April this year. And from April and now on, there are no limits. So they have like to summarize, they have sort of specific rule for the interest, which were like for the period, for the duration of the war until end of April, basically now. And from now on, that's a sort of completely normal regime. And the same for the loans. There are some specific rules which either foreign currency or Ukrainian currency can be used to repay the loans, but generally, in simple words, it's also the more or less normal regime for repayments. That's a big achievement in my opinion, because I see it, how many clients of mine asked about what do you know about that? And the last but not least, that's the dividends. That's again, so now the withdrawal of the dividends for this 24 calendar year is absolutely normal regime with the limit of 1 million again of euro for months, not quarter but months. The bad news are about the past dividends. They are yet sort of frozen, and that's probably one of the only disadvantages of this solution. So generally, they made a great move, and they sort of observing how it works. Hopefully there will be completely normal regime, but we always been in a sort of regulated domain here since the 2014. So I think that investors who've been here before the war, they used to understand that Ukraine sometimes needs to sort of regulate it. But generally, that's a very positive move for the investors. And I think that a tremendous achievement for the country in like Ukraine in a situation where we are. I don't know how other European countries would deal with this.
You're right. It's obviously not a new topic, and so it sounds like the philosophy, if I've got it right, is kind of to start to allow repayment of new loans and to start to allow dividends out for business from now on. And presumably that's a transition. This is a sort of a test it and see kind of step.
Yeah, absolutely. But so far so good. I haven't heard any of the sort of news that there was a wrong move. That my colleagues would comment what they see from their clients or interaction with the national bank. But generally, that's we should speak about that more, because we have a lot of prejudice about how to deal, and especially over the last 2 years. So now that the regime is mostly normal.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. Thank you. I wanted to ask Tatiana, so thank you, Anna, about kind of day-to-day life for businesses who are here. I mean, it's obviously incredibly tough, right? And as a visitor, a very occasional visitor, I've always been, I was amazed how kind of resilient all of you are. Actually, it's really extraordinary, and we sort of forget what day-to-day life looks like. Even getting here is kind of difficult. Getting here and leaving took me 22 hours to get here, and you have to do this all the time every time you want to go everywhere. So, please tell us, maybe Tatiana, tell us about kind of what are the actual key challenges for businesses in Ukraine, right now. Maybe the mobilization laws, and the fractal mobilization, and how does that impact day-to-day practicalities of running businesses? Maybe I can start with that one.
Yes, thank you, Dan, and once again, welcome to Kiev, welcome to Ukraine. It's great to have you here, and good afternoon, everyone. So maybe just to set the scene very quickly before we move on to mobilization, which is obviously a complex and a very sensitive topic. Kind of from my perspective, indeed, one of the barriers to investment in Ukraine is the perception that there is no business in Ukraine, there's no investment. All men are on the front line. The only people who are working are females. And we get it. We understand where this is coming from. The news coverage focuses on the frontline dynamics, casualties, destruction, kind of all the negative stuff. So we do need to find this perception in an elegant way, and indeed, this is a great platform to do so. Ukraine is open for business, and there is ongoing investment as we speak. Many of the deals have already been mentioned by the previous speakers. There are more in the making involving foreign investors, and we hope to be able to share some success stories soon and in due course. And indeed, Ukrainian businesses have demonstrated extreme resilience in the face of the war over the last 2 years, and we've adjusted and adapted to the new normal way of operating. Interestingly, the American Chamber of Commerce very frequently does a survey amongst its member companies, and asks various questions about conducting business in Ukraine. And its most recent survey shows that 86% of the businesses of their members are fully operational and only 12% are operating partially. But overall message is that we're not only operating, but actually making profit. So I think that the key point is the resilience is one of the key factors that continues to make Ukraine attractive even during the wartime. And the main issues that the businesses are facing, regardless of the industry, because there are some industry specifics there, are as Anna has already mentioned, the safety, security of the staff, business assets, there are frequent Russia's missile attacks, there are workforce challenges, employees' health, mental well-being are the key issues that all the businesses are considering and should be considering. So when it comes to the safety issues, before we move on to mobilization, obviously the risks somewhat vary depending on the location of the business. So central western parts tend to be safer, tend to be considered amongst the foreign investors as safer parts of Ukraine for investment purposes. But obviously the risk of missile attacks is applicable to all businesses. So it is essential for Ukrainian businesses to have a plan, a business continuity plan, specific plans to address certain issues, in particular safety issues. What happens when there is an air raid alert, i.e. go bring your employees to the bomb shelter. What do you do if something bad happens? What are the actions? What are the short-term, medium, and long-term actions? And we have this business plan as a business in Ukraine, and many of our clients do as well. So these action plans involve opening branches in safer regions, where possible, obviously moving their staff to safer regions with or within, outside of Ukraine, where possible, within Ukraine, providing ongoing support, security of IT systems, you name it. A related topic, again, which has already been mentioned, is the electricity shortage, given the most recent Russia's missile attacks. We have a huge deficit in the energy system. But again, we're focusing here on the positive things, because the positive thing is that the businesses have adapted. We've gone through a difficult winter, autumn-winter 22-23. And I think that kind of this current situation has not come as a huge surprise to many of the businesses. And for the most part, they're prepared. The generators, electric power stations, Starlinks, you name it. These are the known tools that help most of the businesses operate seamlessly. And we see that those clients who have taken these measures, they thrive, they become more attractive from an investment perspective, especially when it's coupled with an ability to obtain war risk insurance. Then it's kind of sort of a bingo situation in the circumstances. And when it comes to mobilization, it's, as I said, it's a complex and sensitive topic, because it does contribute from a business perspective to workforce challenges, which are anyway caused by the war, displacement of people and other factors. And the AmCham survey, which I've mentioned, it also talks about some interesting stats that 84% of the companies, members of AmCham, they have some of their employees conscripted to the armed forces, 84%. So clearly our country is at war, and undoubtedly thousands of soldiers are very much needed to fight this war. On the other hand, the businesses need the people in order to continue operating seamlessly and support our economy. So one thing cannot exist without the other. So there is this new law which was finally adopted very recently, and it entered into force on the 17th of May. It basically, it was adopted after heated discussions and after more than 4,000 amendments having been introduced. So basically what it does is that it introduces various changes to legislative acts governing the mobilization processes. And further work is needed. Many more ancillary acts are required in order for these processes to work seamlessly. So there are lots of questions from the businesses right now, how this will work, what do we do, how do we send people on business trips, is it easy? Not easy, sometimes very, very challenging and difficult, but I'm sure that this will evolve over time, as with everything else. And it is important to maintain an open dialogue and between the businesses and the government. to discuss these issues, to bring up the topics like, overall kind of conscription, protected categories, business trips, all the things that are super important for the businesses. And AmCham and EBA and similar organizations actually provide very great platforms to do so. So what the businesses should be doing and what we recommend to our clients in the circumstances is really to understand the new mobilization legislation and its impact on particular business, react very quickly to the challenges, understand who are your critical employees, what can you do to keep them, whether they've got any grounds for the deferment from the mobilization, how quickly it is possible to replace them. Is it possible to replace them with female employees? And another big topic, obviously, is the veterans of the war. Some are coming back already, and we've got one of our colleagues who's come back to us. So this topic is very much close to our hearts, because it has an economic, social, and moral aspects to it. And these are the key things that the businesses are already thinking and should be thinking about. The sooner the better. And again, kind of coupled with everything else, it makes the business more resilient, more stable, and more attractive to investors from our perspective.
Yeah. Can I just ask about the administrative bodies? I mean, it's sort of cropped up here and there how the AMC has adapted, and I've heard same from the courts and the judges. But maybe on a kind of at a high level, are you able to get administrative decisions, licenses, issues dealt with, despite all the practical challenges which you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and all those institutions are dealing with?
Yes, Dan, absolutely. I think there were some restrictions and hurdles in the first couple of months of the war, and mainly, kind of some registers were closed, were shut down, mainly for security reasons. But I think that after 6 months, kind of things gradually started being back to normal. So literally right now, to answer your question very, very briefly, it's mainly business back to normal type of situation. We see things being obtained. We see companies being established in one day, with proper preparation time, but things are super, super quick. You can get the licenses, permits, everything that's needed. And moreover, I would say that there is further digitalization process even during the wartime, which simplifies like many processes, given that various people are, in Ukraine, outside of Ukraine. So this really helps, that the government is thinking about this. So to answer your question very briefly, yes, it's sort of like business back to normal, and at times even better.
Very positive. And maybe just to ask somebody from the panel, maybe Anna, actually, in terms of kind of you obviously got your own businesses in Ukraine. We're always talking about our clients, and your clients, but I mean you run businesses, and maybe Anna, a couple of words about kind of first your personal perspective, but you from your firm, what have been the most difficult issues to deal with, and what are you kind of currently facing in terms of adaptation?
Thank you, Dan. Yeah.
You don't have to, I can always ask somebody else.
No, I think the keeping the team is the most challenging, but I think that was where we've been through 2022. So for us, this was important to keep everyone's safety. We moved people to the Western Ukraine, some we moved out of Ukraine as an organized group. So it was literally a camp for 2 months where we kept the female part of the team, which in some sense, ironically, made people even closer, supporting each other. So now I think we are really concerned about the situation without energy and basically light and heating. And the government and all the business are finally starting talking frankly, and I'm so sorry, calling sheet. So there will be a hard winter, but this frank discussion probably will help a bit to just move faster with some decisions and implementing some sort of solutions, which we at least could do. So I think for us, all of us, this infrastructure challenge would be the first priority these days. Right, but nevertheless, I don't feel like we're, desperate and don't see the light in the end of the tunnel. So I see an appetite from those who have not been in Ukraine about Ukrainian opportunities. I agree that that's a sort of specific profile of the clients who have this tolerance to the risk which we have. But on the other hand, the bravest will get much more. And some industry niches are really like a blue ocean. So it's just a matter of how to do it properly. And for us, keeping the team and keeping the talents and developing them despite the war. So I hope that my colleagues will agree on that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask. Yeah, no, I agree. I wanted to ask actually Tatiana or anyone about kind of what bright lights you see. Sometimes we tend to dwell on the challenges and the difficulties, but I think there are some bright lights out there actually on the investment side and on the transactional side. Do you want to say a couple of words, Tatiana?
Yes, absolutely. I think that I'll be the biggest advocate of the fact that there is indeed investment happening, and actually, a great dynamic that some of my fellow panelists here are involved in some of those deals, either on the same side or on the opposite side. So again, this is a great dynamic. So things are indeed happening. Not all the deals are public. Yep. Unfortunately, we can't be talking about many things, but the deals that have been mentioned are really an indication of the investors' trust and in the future of Ukraine. There are obviously quite a few deals where like Ukrainian clients are investing outside of Ukraine, like in sea, testing the waters, expanding their business, which again is probably one of the work streams that keep us and many of my colleagues busy. In terms of how deals are done, I don't see, frankly, any major differences because many deals have historically been done remotely since the pandemic. So just like my other colleagues, we sign close deals, seamlessly remotely, and obviously there are people on the ground that are needed for some matters, and myself, I'm on the ground. But we have a number of colleagues who are located outside of Ukraine, and this has worked really, really nicely and seamlessly, kind of a synergy. And the main difference I would probably highlight for kind of purely Ukrainian kind of inbound investments is the speed of transaction. Some foreign investors are taking much more time than previously with the deal. Obviously, they're not in a rush. They're analyzing things, taking more time to do due diligence. There's always heated discussion about the material adverse change clause, what it means, especially if there's a gap between signing and closing and things like that. But overall, yes, I agree overall with the sentiment and the messages that those who can tolerate the higher risk will get the higher yield. And I can clearly see that some investors are viewing Ukraine as a long-term strategy, and they're mainly strategic investors. I see fewer, much fewer, obviously, private equity and or pretty much no private equity investment, just mainly IFIs, doing their usual stuff, supporting Ukraine and the deals Dragon Capital, BRD, where we also have been involved. We have been involved in the political risk insurance for the Superhumans project, which we have obtained from DFC. So things are indeed moving and moving in a positive direction. So these are my quick reflections.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you say about deals taking a long time, and that's totally understandable. But it's actually it's not unique to Ukraine. Actually, I would say that.
I can see the same dynamic in the region as well.
The region generally, it looks different to 2 or 3 years ago for kind of all sorts of factors.
Geopolitical tensions make many investors rethink valuation and rethink risks, country risks, and other things. So absolutely. So this is in line with the overall kind of CE dynamic.
Yeah. But I also agree there are some bright lights and some very interesting and significant deals happening, and that's great to see. So let there be more. I want to move on to our last topic for today, and it wouldn't be right to ignore it because quite often in the context of Ukraine investments, corruption is mentioned as an issue or a concern. So I wanted to cover it off on this with this group, and Mykola, perhaps you can. It's a sort of it's always a bit of a nebulous topic. People sort of say it's an issue, but they don't really quite rare to actually get a bit more granular and talk about kind of where it becomes an issue, what people are seeing on the ground. So I really wanted to ask you. Your personal perspective, actually, Mykola, from a business perspective, businesses active in Ukraine, particularly foreign businesses, what do they see on the ground? How much of a concern is this in reality or not?
Well, thank you, Dan. I will start with.
I wanted specifically to give you the toughest session.
Yeah, well,
it's your party after all.
As the president of the UBA, I keep talking on this matter, on the rule of law in general, on the anti-corruption efforts and the judicial reform all the time. So I'll be happy to cover that. And before doing that, I would like to refer to what the judge of the Supreme Court, Olena Kibenko, mentioned, that the reality is different from what people often see. And even before talking about the anti-corruption efforts, I would like to refer to an interesting survey that I recently came across that was prepared by research agency InfoSapiens and funded by USAID, and it was published in April 2021, before the war, but I hope there will be an update of the survey sometime in the next few months or a year. So the results of that survey several years ago were as follows. The vast majority of respondents, 86%, have not been involved in judicial proceedings in the previous 24 months. Despite the critical perception of Ukraine's judicial system, those who had interacted with the courts personally during the previous 24 months said that they had a positive experience. 63% of court users reported that they experienced no request for bribes, unofficial payments or gifts, or other corruption-related issues. And 53% agreed that the court's administrative operations and staff work were properly organized and the judges were professionally qualified. I will not be dwelling more on this. I encourage everyone who is interested to either Google it or will be happy to share it. It's just the fact that we're talking in this session about myths and perceptions, and I think people who actually interact with the system find it that is different. The same is true, and this was a survey of general population. The same is true for business. We're not here to say that it's all rosy and there are no disputes and everything is great with the law enforcement agencies. Not at all. Nonetheless, things have improved substantially. The business who operate in Ukraine, they know that there are proper ways to protect their interests by doing proper legal due diligence if you are starting your investments, by doing proper documentation if you are entering into a joint venture with your business partner, by hiring a good law firm to protect your interests if you have a dispute with the tax authority or with labor inspection, etc. So, and to support that example, I would like to refer to major American businesses who have been in Ukraine for decades, not for years, but for decades. Citibank, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble. I mean, many, many more. And the same is true for the European businesses. Some of them are opening new factories. I believe Monsanto has proceeded with their plans on opening their seed factory, etc. So it's a lot is about myths. Now, of course, corruption is available. I mean, is spread in Ukraine, and you still have to fight with it. And a lot has been done in that respect, and I'll be happy to talk more about that later.
Okay, and in terms of what's been happening over the last few years on the reform side, addressing corruption, can you tell us a bit about that? So how do you rate those efforts? Do you think they've been effective?
I think the efforts have been extremely effective. In fact, while I'm talking, I'm asking my colleagues to, I'll share the screen right now. No, I'm sorry. This is not the right screen. This is the screen. Yeah, I hope you can see it now. Yeah, so in the last roughly 10 years, Ukraine, with the help of best international experts, has built what we call an anti-corruption framework of 4 agencies that deal with the prevention of corruption, investigation of corruption, prosecution of corruption, and final judgments. So in my view, we have to be patient. We as the legal community, we as the business community, and the same is true for investors. What you see, and I pulled out here some statistics from the websites of these agencies, that the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, together with the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office and the High Anti-Corruption Court, only in 2023 have had more than 100 criminal proceedings, 257 suspects, 100 indictments, and 65 sentences. In just the first half of 2023, more indictments of corruption were generated than in the years of 2022 and 21. And since its formation, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau has opened thousands of investigations and brought more than 1,000 cases to court. Again, someone may say, well, the numbers are great, but what about top officials? And I have the answer to that as well. If you look at the website of the Anti-Corruption Court, or for that matter, if you look at the press releases of Transparency International that very closely follows the activities of Ukrainian anti-corruption bodies, you will see that quite a few top profile public officials have been investigated and brought to justice. The most recent case that has been investigated for several years was for a former member of parliament, Onishchenko, on a gas fraud case. And the Anti-Corruption Court completed that case and convicted that fugitive member of parliament. Some more statistics. Since its establishment in 2019, the High Anti-Corruption Court issued more than 150 convictions. I mentioned that recent example of Mr. Onishchenko. In 2023 alone, the High Anti-Corruption Court heard 130 criminal cases alleging corruption. That means that the amount of investigated cases is growing. The magnitude of these cases is also growing. And we as the society have to be simply patient. We have to have trust and faith in the system that has been built because the society needed that. The society wished for the rule of law to be established and for the corrupt practices that have their roots back in the Russian Empire times changed. But then once that the society empowered the government and the international experts to create that system, and it has been created, now the society has to be simply patient and have faith in it. And in addition to that, some people will say, well, prosecution is one thing, but what about the rest? I actually personally believe that prevention is even more important than prosecution. On the prevention side, a lot is happening in terms of public officials. So the public officials are under so much scrutiny, you just cannot believe it. They have to submit public declarations of this that disclose their assets, income sources, and significant changes in wealth. These declarations are online accessible online to everyone. And moreover, their way of life of public officials is closely monitored, both by the specialized agency, the National Agency for Corruption Prevention, and by the civil society. And then the data that is presented in the asset declarations is compared with the reality. And there are, of course, strict penalties that punish even technical things, even technical violations or deviations in the declarations. So
I mean, so just on that, so because I think that's it's an interesting point. There's an interesting turning point, I think, when individuals who might be susceptible to corruption kind of start to think actually that they take a second, they think about it twice because they understand that there's the risk of prosecution. And it usually takes a kind of a number of things to be happening, but it's about that sort of change of mentalities. Do you think that's there yet or it's kind of coming? Where would you say?
I think it's changing. You cannot expect a mentality to change in several years. It will take several decades. And I think one of the panelists on the first panel correctly mentioned that it's also about education, but I would broaden her ideas to not only best legal education. I think the legal education in Ukraine is more or less okay. It's more about the general education, educating future generations about why corruption is bad, why it has specific negative implications for a particular person.